Welcome everybody to the Truckee Town Council meeting of May 11th, 2021. We'll call it to order. Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Pallavi.
Here.
Vice Mayor Henderson. Here. Mayor Klövstad.
Here.
Councilmember Zabriskie.
Here.
Councilmember Romack. Here.
And may I just take a moment to welcome everybody to Chambers. It is so nice to not be up here alone. So we might, this is new. We have a couple council members that have not actually been in Chambers yet. So bear with us. We might have a few gaffes or transitions, but we're gonna work it all out tonight when we're really excited to have everybody here. We also have department heads in the room with us, all socially distanced and masked. So thank you everybody for participating and complying. And now we get to enjoy the Pledge of Allegiance together. Please join me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States.
Okay, and now we get to watch video of the Pledge of Allegiance done by Lieutenant Madden, Lieutenant Renfro, and Sergeant Donahue during their swearing-in ceremony that I attended with their kids.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Lieutenant Madden's little boys in their twin suits were the hit of the party. I would also like to take a moment to just note that this is National Police Week, and this Saturday is Peace Officer Memorial Day, which normally there's a ceremony that we attend in Sacramento. Is that correct? You want to speak on that, Chief?
Sure. The ceremony, I believe, has been postponed until September or October, but they will have some online component this week.
Great, thank you. And just as a side note, San Luis Obispo is kind of my second home. Spent many years of my life there attending college, and our hearts and thoughts go out to the family of the police officers that were shot down there, and I understand one did not survive. Yeah, so tragic. Okay, and I understand we do have some public comment on general items. And so just for the community's note, this is time for council to listen to public comment on items that are not agendized. Because they're not agendized, we cannot discuss them or take action on them, but we are here to listen and are interested to hear your thoughts on anything that is not on our agenda.
Hi, this is a public comment for agenda item number 4. I believe it's the roadway vegetation management program. My name is Scott Rorick. I am the homeowner and resident at 10745 Jeffrey Pine Road in the Sierra Meadows subdivision of Truckee. The comment is that I oppose the plan without sort of common sense exclusions. I personally have a row of mature aspen trees that are within 10 feet of the road. I believe these should be spared because they are not posing fire danger. The aspens have lower fire danger than the conifers. Also, these trees are not near any other structure or power lines or any other vegetation for that matter. I'd like to get these trees excluded from the plan, but also generally against the plan in my neighborhood, as I feel we're going to lose a lot of trees that are not posing direct fire danger, and I feel the plan is basically anything within 10 feet. without sort of common sense exclusions. And so this comment is in opposition to the plan overall, and also in regards to my property, looking at these row of aspen trees specifically. I can be reached at 415-939-0386. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you, Scott.
Hello, my name is Sarah Green. I'm a Truckee town resident. I'd like to provide comment again on the roadway vegetation management project. I appreciate the fact the town has decided to make the adjustment to leave trees over 24 inches in diameter. However, I'm still very concerned that this project is doing more harm than good. I understand that a great deal of time and effort has been put into this project. However, proposing a blanket removal of all vegetation except large trees in the 10-foot easement is a disservice to our community. This project flies in the face of all of our efforts to be climate savvy. The removal of healthy fire-resistant vegetation, such as aspens and lilacs, directly contradicts our climate mitigation strategies. There is one blatant example in Glenshire which demonstrates the less than calculated approach being implemented. I have submitted a photo of one property on Waterloo Circle. A row of lilacs has clearly been addressed according to protocol. The result? 3 large, healthy lilacs have been partially removed. It's now an eyesore and showcases the obvious lack of thoughtful planning. A more reasonable approach could be implemented, which takes into consideration our residents, our neighborhoods, and our climate concerns. I encourage the town staff to consider additional project adjustments. I also ask the town council to put this on your next agenda for further discussion and consideration. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Sarah.
Hello, my name is Lisa Holen. This is a public comment item. I currently live in Glenshire, and I've been a Truckee resident for over 20 years. I'm calling about the current vegetation clearing that's being undertaken for fire mitigation. I know that fire mitigation needs to be a top priority, and I'm appreciative that the town is being proactive about reducing our fire risk. However, I'm concerned about some of the trees that are being removed or will be removed. As an ecologist, I have to wonder if the environmental services provided by some of these trees, for example, moisture retention in the soil and in the landscape in general, might be more beneficial than their fire risk is hazardous. First, aspens. Aspens are not high fire hazard trees, and in fact can act as a fire break, particularly when there is little or no understory fuel, because of their high moisture content and smooth, tight bark. Why are we cutting aspens? Second, large trees. I understand that the town recently decided not to cut trees greater than 24 inches DBH, which is diameter at breast height. And I think this is good. But trees greater than 24 inches in diameter are huge. For reference, that's a tree that is more than 6 feet around. I can't even come close to wrapping my arms around such a huge tree. I'm glad we are protecting these very large trees. However, there are still large trees, large healthy trees, that fall short of 24 inches in diameter and will still be felled. I would much, much rather see these trees limbed and alive than cut down completely. It seems the best thing we can do to suppress or mitigate fire is to focus on dead vegetation and low brush. Therefore, I suggest a fire mitigation policy of A, not cutting aspens, and B, limbing and retaining healthy conifers that are 18 inches or greater in diameter. So for reference, that's almost 5 feet around still. They're pretty big. That's it. Thank you for hearing my comments, and I hope you'll take my suggestions under consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Hello, my name is Kevin Bartis, and I am interested in fixing the four-way intersection on East Jaboom Street coming down from Coburn Crossing. There's 2 stop signs at that intersection, and I believe that it's a little tricky to know who has the right of way. So I was hoping to address this and hopefully get it onto the agenda for a later event. Thank you for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Take care.
Thank you, Kevin.
And that's all for item 4.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we have a proclamation for Mental Health Month, and I'm trying to get to that part. Okay, and we're presenting this to Shannon Decker. Is she?
Hi.
Oh, awesome, she's with us. That's even better. Okay. Proclamation, Truckee, California. Whereas half of the population will experience some type of mental health challenge over the course of a lifetime. And whereas mental health challenges are one of the most common health conditions in California, affecting 1 out of 6 adults and impacting both the person experiencing mental health challenges and those persons who care and love for the person facing the challenge. And whereas 1 out of every 24 Californians with a serious mental illness have difficulty functioning in everyday life, and if left untreated, have life expectations 25 years shorter than the general population. And whereas every day, millions of people face stigma related to mental health, and many feel isolated and alone, going years before receiving any help. And whereas recovery can and does happen, and all Californians should know that support and help is available regardless of any individual's situation. And whereas creating a community where everyone feels comfortable reaching out for the support they deserve is crucial to ending the stigma around mental health. And whereas access to support and ending the stigma is of paramount importance. And now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the mayor of the town of Truckee that May 2021 as Mental Health Matters Month in Truckee, California, to enhance public awareness of mental health and to help end the stigma. Done this 11th day of May of 2021. I just want to say that I actually believe this touches even more people than those statistics, but I want to validate the importance of this acknowledgement and changing the stigma around this disease, because it is treatable, and we should all address it as such. Shannon, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I just wanted to say thank you to you and to the town of Truckee for acknowledging this. The theme this year is Hope for Change. Over the past year, there's been a lot to get through for everyone as far as mental health goes. And for those who struggle with a mental illness, it's just far greater. Normally, I'm asking people to program the crisis line into their phone, but today I'm here to promote the California Warm Line. If at any point you are in need of just speaking with someone about anything, 855-845-7415. You can speak with someone who is in California, who is trained to have a conversation on that gambit of anything related to mental health or substance use.
Thank you, Shannon. I'm just a quick question. I'm assuming if somebody couldn't remember that number, they could call 211, and 211 Connecting Point would be able to provide them that number or some other resource?
Yes, absolutely. 211 is a great place to go. You can ask for a local warm line. There's youth warm lines for our younger population. The National Alliance on Mental Illness runs various warm lines, and the crisis line, the crisis text line, the national hotline are also always available. So 211 is a great number. By the summer of 2022, we will have a 3-digit suicide prevention number that will be 988 for ease in remembering.
Oh, that's great. Oh, I think we lost your audio, though, here at the end. So that we can let Shannon move on, do any other council members have questions for Shannon or on this agenda item? No, great. Shannon, thank you so much. Best of luck in that new number. We're looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Especially after a COVID year. All right, agenda item 5.2. Jen, you're going to present Public Works Week.
We are. So we have a video to share with you, a quick video, but May 16th through the 22nd is National Public Works Week, and the theme this year is Stronger Together. So with that, Braun and the Public Works team put together a little video we'd like to share.
The average person on the street may have no idea of the role public works plays in our lives. But the fact is, we rely on public works for just about everything we do.
You know, it's easy to joke about street maintenance, but few people really understand what it takes to maintain our roadways.
Various materials and techniques have to be applied to repair surfaces.
There are hot patches, cold patches, overlays, chip seals, crack sealing, and of course, good old pothole repairs.
Sound like a busy group of people?
Through technology, Public Works can respond appropriately to needs within the transportation system. An efficient response to weather can both save money and have a positive impact on traffic. Cars keep moving.
Public works and engineering are intertwined. The concepts, principles, design, and development of the systems that our communities run on is the domain of engineers. Behind every road, traffic signal, water pipe, stormwater inlet is a system designed by engineers.
I think it's important to have someone whose, job and sort of career is to make sure they're there when people need them.
In addition to helping communities cope with actual emergency events, Public Works plays a central role in mitigating against potential hazards and preparing for the natural disaster events that will surely come.
Flooding can be a minor inconvenience or a major hazard to life and property. Public Works is responsible for the various elements of a community's stormwater system. Public Works departments are often responsible for maintaining roadside medians and sometimes even parkland. In addition to mowing, they might be responsible for items located in the public right-of-way, such as sprinkler systems, road or signal poles, and signs.
To keep a community maintained, Public Works utilizes a significant fleet of vehicles and equipment that serve a wide variety of maintenance functions.
Public facilities such as city halls, public safety facilities, and community centers often fall under the responsibility of the Public Works Department. The interior as well as the exterior of these facilities must be maintained. Public Works is also involved in the behind-the-scenes work at public events. They maintain communication facilities and telecommunications equipment. What would you say if I said the words Public Works to you?
Public Works.
Snow removal? Do you have any idea what Public Works, or what other things Public Works does for it?
Street lights, street signs, stop signs.
Do you kind of take them for granted like the rest of us?
No.
Are you mayor?
No, but my husband used to be a public works director.
Is that right? It's actually Public Works.
Is it really?
Yeah. Do you think maybe the Public Works are pretty valuable to us?
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Take care of you?
Absolutely.
So that's all Public Works.
Public Works. Public Works. Everyday heroes.
So we like to use these weeks as an opportunity to share with the council and the community everything that our different departments are doing. And Riley Morrison was the creative mind behind that video. So thank you, Riley, and thank you, Dan, and your entire team in Public Works and Engineering for all the work that you guys do every day.
Of course, Riley was responsible for that. There wasn't any wrapping. Next time. That was great. I so appreciate everything that our Public Works crews do, as I know all of our council members do. We quite literally wouldn't be a town of Truckee unless we had that department doing for us what we all do, or what we all enjoy having done. All right, 5.3. Back at you, Jen. Presentation on employee incentive awards.
Yes, thank you. So this we get to do quarterly. This quarter we have one incentive award, and that's for Caitlin Brennan, and she is in our clerk's office. So Caitlin came to the office after Jen Masters left, and we have a process in the clerk's department in the town where we have the Fair Politician Practices Commission. We have to file our Form 700s, our FPPC Form 700s. We have as many as 35 annual Form 700s. Then when we have council elections and candidate elections, up to 10 or so candidate filing forms that we process. And it's a very manual process typically. And Caitlin came in, she helped to facilitate monitoring software and reviewing software that could help automate that process. Once that software was identified, she implemented it, and for the first time in 2021, we used the software for our annual statements and had 100% compliance, which is actually a really big deal. We are typically having to send lots of reminders and notices that you'll be fined if it doesn't get in by the end of the day from the FPPC. So great job from Caitlin for doing that. Caitlin's a hardworking person. I look forward to seeing her every day. She's got a great sense of humor. It's just a joy to have in the office, and we're very lucky to have her as part of the family. So Caitlin, if you're watching or if you watch later, great job, and thank you so much for all your hard work.
Hear, hear to Caitlin. Yeah, having it online is just magical because all the information is already there and you just have to do the updates. It's beautiful. So before we go on to 5.4, I thought I'll pause and see if any other council members want to add any comments or have any questions on 5.2 or 5.3. Good. Okay, great. So 5.4, Pacific Crest Commons, affordable housing on the former California Highway Patrol site. So we're going to have a project presentation. We have Shauna Doherty making her way to the station.
Okay, can you hear me?
No, your mic is not on.
Good evening, Council. I'm excited to introduce the team that's behind the affordable housing that's happening at the old CHP site, now called Pacific Crest Commons, thanks to feedback from town staff to get to that name. We talk a lot about the affordable housing that's opening this year, which we're so excited about, but we also are constantly planning into the future. So this is something that will probably open in about 2 years, but this is our first time presenting it sort of in a public forum. And the team tonight that's going to present for about 10 to 15 minutes is, I call it the PPPP team. So it's public, so it's state, county, town, not town, but we're involved, and then private investment. So it's a pretty exciting team. So the presenters tonight are Jonathan Heim from the state, the Department of General Services, who's the running the process. We have Shellen Rodriguez, the project manager from the Pacific companies on the development side. And then we have Michael Collum from HCD, who is going to be available if there's questions. I do want to mention that this project is part of the SB2 process, which you'll be hearing about at the next council meeting. And with that, I'll turn it over to the team.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I always have to ask, and hopefully you can see the first slide of the presentation.
We can see that as well. Welcome.
Great, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. So thank you, Shauna, for that introduction. My name is Shellen Rodriguez, and in this capacity, I'm working as a project manager with the Pacific Companies. And as Shauna mentioned, we're really excited about this project. It's still relatively preliminary, but we thought it would be a good opportunity to just kind of update you on the affordable housing development and where we are. So this is the power of a partnership, the PPP, as I think Shauna said. We have been working closely with the Department of General Services, who owns the parcel, as well as Cal HFA and then the HCD, which is the Housing Community Development group at the state level. They were the ones that put the RFP out, and then we've been working with the Regional Housing Authority in Nevada County, working with those folks, as well as JK Architecture and Engineering, which is the civil team that I'll talk a little bit more about, civil and architecture team that I'll talk a little bit more about. But in general, this does take a village, and we're really excited about the partnership that we have to date. So this presentation, like Shauna mentioned, we're going to hopefully keep it to 10 minutes. Jonathan, who you see as well, is joined with the Department of General Services Asset Management Division. We'll just kind of review the executive order that's in place and how we kind of got where we are today, how it's relevant to the Truckee community and the process to date. I'll reintroduce you to the team, many of the team members you may know, as well as talking a little bit about the affordable and workforce housing need as we know it, and then going over the particular milestones and timeline of the project. So with that, Jonathan, I'll turn it over to you to kind of dive into the executive order on affordable housing.
Okay, thank you, Shellen. Good evening, Mayor and Town Council members. I'm John Heim, and I'm with the California Department of General Services Asset Management Branch. In January of 2019, an executive order on housing was issued by the governor, which instructed DGS and Housing and Community Development to utilize tools and authority we have to accelerate the development of affordable housing throughout California. The first thing we did was develop a systematic approach to a statewide study of state-owned properties to identify sites that could accommodate the development of affordable housing. HCD staff reviewed the final cut of possible sites and prioritized them based upon various criteria, such as proximity to high-frequency transportation, education, and housing. The executive order also encouraged the use of innovative construction approaches that would shorten the delivery time as well as lower the overall project cost. Partnering with local governments to bring our resources together with the local needs is a key goal. And all of this is to be done in an expedited fashion by using state land and long-term ground leases. Next slide, please. The executive order prescribes several screening tools that DGS and HCD use to gauge local housing need. This included criteria such as year-over-year increases in rent and the gap between demand for housing and housing units that are available. Based on our analysis, Truckee and surrounding parts of Nevada and Placer County were identified as having a high need for housing. We also look at the economic feasibility of building housing in these locations, as well as what resources would be available to the residents. For example, proximity to transit, jobs, and education. Next slide, please. A little recap on the number of parcels we reviewed to create the statewide map. We started out with over 44,000 parcels. That was my job that somebody gave me. We were able to reduce that list to about 1,300 state-owned properties, then down to 500 sites, and finally 75 sites that were identified for statewide affordable housing projects. The town of Truckee had stayed in touch with DGS since the CHP relocation and housing has always been a primary consideration. And the site was on the map for selection for affordable housing. We worked closely with town staff to make sure our request for proposal reflected the needs of the town, and we were able to draft, release, and select a developer for the former CHP site in about 6 months. Next slide, please. The land will remain state-owned, and development approvals will be processed by the state, which will reduce the time to construction. Because the land will remain state-owned and leased to the developer for $1 a year, the value of the land is thereby leveraged to increase the affordability of the project. The project will utilize modular construction, which was a goal of the executive order, and because it will be a state project on state land, prevailing wage will be applicable. I'll now turn it back over to Shellen.
Thank you, Jonathan. So first, the state submitted, they put out an RFQ, and then the folks that that met the qualifications and that request for qualifications were put into the next tier to submit request for proposals or make a submission to that request, which I just put up the points. It was a competitive process. It focused on affordability and how the project related to the market context. It also focused on, the financing and how feasible the overall development was, the experience of the firm, and the development program itself, as well as any additional kind of community benefit, if you will. So there was a competitive process, and those priorities went into how the DGS was reviewing and ultimately chose the Pacific companies. So the Pacific companies, many of you may be familiar with. We own a handful of assets there in Truckee and in Tahoe. You can see in the images to the right of the slide. Frischman Hollow Phase 1 and Phase 2, Hennis Flats are just the three that we currently own in the town. Andrea Clark, I work closely with Caleb Roop, the CEO and president of Pacific. Andrea Clark, vice president, is involved with this project, as well as Chris Grant, who's done construction management on the second phase of Frischman. So some of the town staff may have worked with him over the last year or two. And then we also have in-house asset management. And we brought JK Architecture and Engineering on. I mentioned that earlier. They have an office there in Truckee, as well as up in Tahoe City and over in Reno. And the team at JK, as well as Pacific, has worked very closely together over the years, not only in the Tahoe region, but also in other snow country areas in Mono County and Mammoth Lakes in particular. We'll be using Cambridge Real Estate Services. That's who we will contract with to do the property management. They operate quite a few different multifamily developments in Truckee, including the two that you see in the screen that are built, as well as Coburn Crossing and some other developments that are in the town. So we're looking forward to continuing that relationship with Cambridge. And then AutoVol is the volumetric, automated volumetric is what it stands for. And they are the manufactured housing group that we will be using to complete this innovative project. So really quick, TPC's been in existence since the late 90s. We are a long-term owner. I notice now that my Hawaii projects are kind of floating out and nowhere on the slide, but the long and the short of it is we own and operate just under 200 developments throughout the West, over 14,000 affordable units. They span from very urban areas into rural, a lot of high country, snow country areas. Over $3 billion in assets. So we're a very solid partner in that respect. And we have a lot of diversification when it comes to the size of the projects that we can complete, as well as the type of financing that we work with. And like I mentioned, we're a long-term owner and have a long history of success in mountain regions in particular. So here again, I mentioned the second phase of Frischman that you see on the far left, the older first phase, as well as the Hennis Flats, which combined Frischman phase 1 and 2 are about 100 units after it's going to be complete, hopefully later this year. And then Hennis Flats was about 90 units, focusing on large unit size and the extremely low income. Again, all of these were TPC coupled with Cambridge, and we did quite a bit of partnerships in those projects as well, including working with the town as the town of Truckee donated the land for those projects. We worked with Martis Fund. We also have a standing relationship with the Regional Housing Authority, both in Truckee as we serve some of their clients, but also down in Grass Valley and other communities they serve. I stole this image from the Mountain Housing Council. I do use it often in my work. I think the point of this image is just to show the broad spectrum of achievable housing types. And in particular, this project, Pacific Crest Commons, will be serving folks from about 30 to 40% AMI up to about 80% AMI. So it's rental housing, and this is the area of folks that it'll be serving. Quickly, it will not be long. It'll obviously be a 12-month lease, will not be short-term rentals. That's oftentimes a concern that we hear. Will serve household and incomes, people that are working in Truckee and living in Truckee or the region, and making, depending on the household size, making anywhere between about $19,000 a year up to about $75,000 a year. Again, depending on household size, with rents being anywhere from about $450 for a smaller unit up to $1,700 for a larger, higher income unit. So that's the goal, and that helped meet the criteria that DGS had put out in their RFQP. Pacific Crest Commons has a pretty aggressive schedule. This was what was submitted in the proposal. Community outreach has begun. We've sent postcards to adjacent neighbors, just introducing the project and ourselves as the developer. We're hoping to get through entitlements and then financing later this year and early next to start construction, hopefully in about a year, right? Spring of 2022. Modular construction, it'll similar to Frischman 2, it'll be a blank site, and then all of a sudden there'll be buildings there with about a 12-month construction period. So this is just a picture of I don't know if any of you folks or maybe the folks that are listening have received this postcard yet or not, but this is the image of the postcard that we sent out to folks to introduce ourselves, and our website that has a little bit more information on it. Again, the project's still preliminary, but we're working through it, and that's really all I had. And I'm happy to take comments or just turn it back over to Shauna. And thank you very much for including us in this.
And Shauna, did you have any more that you wanted to add? No? Okay, great. Shaylin, thank you. And Jonathan, that was great information. I have a few questions. I'm assuming some of my other council members do as well. Councilmember Pallavi, would you like to start?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Klofstad. Even remembered to hit the mic button. That's good.
Good job.
Yeah. Just working on that. Thank you for a great presentation. Excited to have your company coming back to Truckee. This is the awkward, I can't really look at you, so that's fine. I was familiar with this process, been following it for a while. I guess my only question to staff and maybe Danielle or Shauna is just, at what purview, what review authority is this? I understand it's primarily out of our review authority from both the design, density, et cetera standpoint, but maybe you could just give us a little bit of color as to, what we do have and sort of what we can expect from, a policy discussion, if at all, if anything.
Yeah, I'll probably tag team. Danielle and I are looking at each other. So I and I'll also have Shellen chime in on this because Chantal and I are teamed up to work on this project. So we, as was stated earlier, by Jonathan. It's not required that the project go through our normal development review process. However, the planning staff has done an informal review and engineering at every sort of appropriate time. My understanding, Shellen, and chime in here, is that building permits are going to be required, correct? So there will be that level of review happening from the building permit side. It'll be more of an informal review process with the planning department and the engineering department. So they're invited in as much as possible. They just won't be doing the final stamp of approval through our normal process.
And then just how many, do we have an idea of like how many units are at this point and how tall and site coverage? Do we get more site coverage because it's a state site? What are we looking at? Well, we just don't know.
Oh, no, I'm going to let Shellen respond to that.
Sure. Yeah, if I may, Councilmember Pallavi, it's a good question, and I knew it was going to come up because we're in the middle of figuring all that out. I'll say that the project as proposed and still needs to go through CEQA at the state level is slated to be between 50 and 60 units and is slated to be up to 3 stories high. So I say that, I know there's a lot of listeners that might trigger some concerns or not, but the housing need is really strong in the community, and we feel that was the most advantageous way for us to meet the priorities of the RFP. So we're aiming to get to that level of density. I don't have the coverage numbers right off the top of my head, but it does still need to go through the environmental process at the state level. So it could change is what I should have caveated that with.
Yeah, and that just leads me to my only last question, which is there any environmental remediation on that site? There were probably some underground storage tanks, anything like that either gets streamlined or not streamlined, or maybe it doesn't exist. I don't know. It's to you, Shellen, I guess. They're all looking at you. So.
And Shellen, if you can take away your PowerPoint, then we can see a bigger image of you.
Oh, that's high pressure.
There we go.
Okay. So, hi. Thank you, Councilmember Pallavi. Again, good question. The state, in the process that they went through that Jonathan mentioned, really did a good job of doing a lot of the due diligence around those sites that they were prioritizing for the executive order. So the site does have some phase one and I think a portion of the phase 2 done. There is some cleanup that'll be the responsibility of the development, but there's no major issues as far as we know to date.
Great. Look forward to you guys coming back and doing another project in our community. Thank you. That's all I have, Mayor Klostad.
Vice Mayor Henderson, do you have any questions?
I don't think I have any additional questions. Councilmember Pallavi, those were great questions, and I think you covered the ones that I had. So thank you.
Okay, we'll go to this side. Councilmember Zabriskie.
I have a question for Jonathan Heim and then a couple for Sean Tall. Mr. Heim, can you tell us what sustainable construction and equitable construction are?
I hope Michael from HCD can get on and add to that. Sustainable construction would be termed mass timber. There's not going to be any mass timber involved with this. The push was for a much greater use of modular construction for these type of projects statewide. And luckily that is coming into play in a number of these different projects we're doing. And Shellen can maybe go into a little bit more detail about how her company does do the modular construction. But there's always hope for additional creativity in construction techniques. If that helps answer.
And then equitable construction, what's meant by that?
I asked HCD that, and we've decided that that is prevailing wage. And because it is a state site, and will remain a state site on a long-term ground lease, and we're discounting the lease rate to $1, it would automatically make it a prevailing wage project.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
The questions I have for Chantal relate to both the state's and this town's greenhouse gas emission goals. Because this project will be within our jurisdiction, I'm sure it'll be part of our greenhouse emissions inventory. And I'm wondering if Pacific Commons can tell us whether on a per capita basis greenhouse gas emissions will be under 2 metric tons per person after the project is filled up with residents.
Chantal's not here tonight, but I will say that the state is still working on their CEQA analysis for this, so I don't know, Shellen, if you have any other additional information you want to share. I don't think they've done any kind of inventory assessment yet, and I don't know what their plans are once the project's constructed.
Okay. In that respect, can you tell me, is this intended to be an all-electric development? Or where will you be in terms of REACH code compliance or exceeding REACH codes?
So would you like me to take that, council member?
Whoever's most knowledgeable.
I'll take a stab at it, and if there's anything that either the town or my partners at the state would like to add, please feel free. But I think the answer that staff gave is absolutely correct, in that the CEQA hasn't been completed yet, so some of those metrics haven't been fully determined. The follow-up then would be, it will be fully electric, as using the financing sources that the state has for affordable housing generally require that. So it will be fully electric. We are studying whether or not this site qualifies for any exemptions. I'm not sure if that's the right word, in relationship to some of the solar paneling due to snow loads. We're not particularly set one way or another on that, besides that we're happy to do it, especially based on the code, and creating sort of not only sustainable development, but also an affordable development.
Thank you.
It looks like Michael did jump in. Did you want to add anything, Michael, to this sustainability discussion that we just had?
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. I was just going to respond by saying that one of the primary principles and objectives of the executive order, and for which the Pacific Companies was selected and scored, was on their past successes in implementing sustainability throughout their projects and in working in this complex mountain environment, as Shellen had mentioned. I will also say again that all executive order projects throughout the state are subject to prevailing wage. That is what John was referring to. And what we are excited about with this project is the opportunity to incorporate that into the Pacific Company and Autovol's use of modular construction. What we are excited about with this project is the opportunity to really use this to show the opportunity of how affordable and high quality housing can be built efficiently and sustainably. And it's likewise a shared goal of the state that we share with you, council member, and with the rest of the city council and the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you for adding on to that, Jonathan. So I think one of the benefits that we've previously been told about modular construction is there's very low waste. There's also not as much travel to and from the site from a variety of trades and laborers. Are there any other assets that you would like to share with us about this particular type of construction?
I think I'll refer that question to Shellen, if I may.
Sure. Yes. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, council member. It's a good question. Those items that you mentioned are absolutely true. Unfortunately, I don't have my little cheat sheet here with me, but yes, the And I would say, given the current state of affairs in the community and in the region, one of the strongest benefits of doing this offsite modular construction is that workers don't need to come into the community and take up other affordable housing. So we don't need to build temporary affordable housing for the workers. That saves a lot of cost. But at the same time, there's way less waste. It's way more efficient. There's way better interior air quality because of the wood hasn't been out in the yard getting wet or moldy or any of those issues. We can also seal up using seal up the buildings in a sort of more efficient manner with a little bit more quality control overall. So overall, modular built construction is a very sustainable and very green way of doing it, coupled with sort of what's easiest on the community with lack of transit. They just show up once. There's not people coming back and forth every day from Reno, coming back and forth every day from Grass Valley. So all in all, it is a very sustainable methodology.
Thank you, Shellen. Councilmember Romack.
No further questions, but thank you, Shellen, Michael, and Jonathan. Very excited to learn more about this project.
Okay, I just had a couple last ones. Everybody got through most of my questions. Jonathan, I'm wondering if you can tell me how many proposals did you receive for this particular site, or was it divided up that way?
Statewide, we've approached the different projects in a number of different ways. Sometimes we put out an RFP. In this case, we put out an RFQ. And from the responses from the RFQ, we shortlisted a number of firms to go to the RFP round. In that instance, there were two that were deemed most competitive and most experienced for a site such as Truckee. And during that process, only one of the identified developers chose not to submit. And so we had a good selection at the end, which was fine. It turned out very nice because it was somebody with a long-standing relationship and good track record in Truckee, which was the Pacific Company.
Great, thank you. So, Shellen, your timeline was cut off on the other side with the boxes of your faces. I'm extrapolating that it's about June 2023 that these would open. Is that correct?
Yes, Council Chairperson. Yes, that is the most aggressive scenario. So we are hoping to use project-based vouchers, hoping to use No Place Like Home funds, hoping to use 4% tax credits along with the bonds from the state. Some of those things are more competitive than others, and so we have to get entitled, complete the environmental in order to apply for some of those funds, and then assuming we get those in the first round, we would then move forward with starting construction spring, summer 22 with a completion about 12 months later, spring, summer 23. So that is correct what you extrapolated.
Great, thank you. And I'm assuming since we're talking modular construction, the existing facility there is being torn down. Is that correct? And we just talked about all the great benefits of modular construction, which I agree with. We also have a lot of local contractors here that I know would love to be involved. And so will there be local contract bidding for things like site work and other aspects of the project?
Yes, again, great question. I'm glad you brought it up because I wasn't clear in my initial response. Yeah, it is the practice of our team to always try to use local as much as we can when applicable. So absolutely, and we'll be handling it the same way that we handled Frishman 2 quite recently. So, I would just offer if there's been concerns at staff level, if there's been anything that, hasn't gone well, now's a great time to give me a shout and we can try to troubleshoot and address any, concerns or challenges that that may be perceived or real in that regard.
Great, thank you. That's all the questions I have. Any questions for staff?
I have a quick thing to add. For what it's worth, I'm working with Pacific and with Shellen, who's the project manager, on a 400 to 500, potentially 580 unit project in Mammoth. And Pacific has been extraordinarily responsive to the town's needs and requests, and everything that the town has asked of them, they've done. Shellen's been timely in her responses. They've been very thorough. They've just really been a terrific partner to work with. So bearing in mind that we really don't have much oversight over this project, I believe that they're sincere. I've talked to Caleb and Shellen about this when they say they really do want to work with us. And so I'm optimistic that this will proceed well and smoothly. And I think that of all the developers that could possibly have bid on this project that we don't have any real oversight over, I think we are fortunate that Pacific ended up being the one.
That is a wonderful addition, Mr. Morris. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, we do have a very successful track record thus far. Any other staff comments or questions? Yes, Shauna.
So one thing that wasn't really highlighted is the 8 project-based vouchers. So we're working with Nevada County to try to create 8 supportive housing units. And so that's a long-term solution for housing our homeless population. And so you've had that presentation, but supportive housing is on-site housing with on-site wraparound services. And we don't have anything like that in the Truckee region. And so I just wanted to highlight, because I don't think the funding was highlighted, but not 8 of those units within that project would be supportive housing, is what we're aiming for.
That is excellent to point out. And when you say support services, can you elaborate a little bit on that? It's not like amenities, it's services.
Yeah, so the nonprofit, probably AMI Housing, would come in with a staff person and provide a high level of services for those people experiencing chronic homelessness and mental health needs, and have on-site, there would be a community room and making sure they're taking their meds and, just being on-site for support services within that complex.
Great, thank you so much.
Yep.
Any other staff comments? Okay, great. We will open up public comment after town manager's report then, I think, if we have anything else. Thank you so much, Shellen, Jonathan, Michael. Really appreciate the presentation. All right, town manager's report, 5.5, right?
Yes, thank you so much. And now that we're an hour in the meeting, I'm going to do a little cleanup as to some of the processes that are happening tonight, just so the public is aware of what they're seeing, because you are kind of moving your head to look in one direction for some presentations and not for others. So this is the first time the 5 of you have been here in this room as a council, so welcome. We're happy to have you back. Also, the staff is here, the department head team is here. For the community, our staff presentations, those members of our team are going to be coming into the chambers just for their presentations. So there may be a slight delay as they come in, wipe down the workstation, and bring up their presentation. So we appreciate your patience on that. We are easing into reopening and being as cautious as possible, but we look forward to increasing our number of employees in this room and welcoming the public back, hopefully in the very near future. There's also 2 air filtration fans in the room. They're fairly quiet. I don't think we hear them very much, but if anybody at home is hearing a little bit of an undertone, that could be what that is. For the council members, the presentations that staff complete at the workstation on my right, you should be able to view those on your screens in front of you, as well as to the TV monitor on my right. For the presentations from our guests, such as Pacific Crest, you can see them on the screen behind Ms. Hobbs. It is delayed though, so just recognize that if you don't want to turn your heads to your right. And then also a COVID update. We are beginning to reopen in our facilities. So our community development counter will be open by appointment only starting on Monday, May 17th. They're 30-minute appointments from 8 to 12 p.m. Monday through Friday. And if you're interested in scheduling an appointment, you simply have to email planningdepartment@townoftruckee.com. So again, that's planningdepartment@townoftruckee.com. We're waiting for more guidance on the June 15th reopening, and we'll be determining if we can open more of our facilities based on that guidance. So more to come on that front. And as a reminder, if anybody in the community has not been vaccinated yet and they wish to do so, you can sign up at myturn.com and get that scheduled. There seems to be plenty of appointments lately. For those of us in the room, we do ask that you keep your masks on if you're not speaking. Again, out of abundance of precaution. If you are speaking, giving a presentation, and you're comfortable, you can remove your masks. For council members, if you have questions or comments, again, if you're comfortable, you can remove your mask, but we ask that you put them on again after you're done speaking. And hopefully those restrictions will lighten up as we continue to get new guidance from the CDC and OSHA. Also, I wanted to remind the community our bike survey is still open. We extended that for one more week. We have about 200 responses so far, so we're hoping to get a few more. You can find that on our town's website on the homepage. There's a link to that. And the Mountain Housing Council survey is also still open, and you can find that on Mountain Housing Council website as well. I believe that closes at the end of the week. And then lastly, Friday, May 14th is our first Green Waste Disposal Day. That's a free event for our residents. It's from 8 to 2 p.m. at the Truckee Rodeo Grounds. So we hope to see you there if you have any green waste. And Mayor Klövstad, as you said in the beginning, I'd just like to reiterate that our thoughts are with SLO and the police department and the community there for the tragedy that happened yesterday. And that's all.
Thank you very much. Any council questions on town manager's report? No? Okay, let's go ahead and open up. Do we have any public comment on presentations? No?
No.
But I believe we do have some public comment on consent. Is that correct? I'll go ahead and read through the consent agenda, and then we can listen to that public comment. So item 6.1, minutes of April 27th meeting. Item 6.2, acceptance of per capita pass-through grant for West River Park, which is C1817. Item 6.3, the professional services contract amendment with Roy Harthorn for Building Division Plan Review Services. Item 6.4, adoption statement of investment policy for the 2021-2022 fiscal year. 6.5 is the treasurer's report, quarter ended March 2021. Item 6.6, notice of completion for Coldstream Road, Donner Creek structure replacement project, just in time to build over it, right? And item 6.7, purchasing authorization for Nimble Storage attached network and server solution from 4A Partners. And we keep going, it's a long list tonight. Item 6.8, adoption of updated personnel rules. Item 6.9, contract with TAB Products Company, LLC for shelving for property and evidence storage at the new Courtyard building. And finally, item 6.10, endorsement of the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act of 2021, House Resolution 2307. Do we have any council members that would like to pull an agenda or a consent agenda item? Do we have any staff that would like to pull? Okay, so let's go ahead and listen to public comment.
Hello, this is Deirdre Henderson. I'm the group leader of the North Tahoe chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby, and I'm calling about agenda item 6.10, which is updating the Town Council's endorsement of the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, which is now HR 2307. I want to again express CCL's gratitude for your original endorsement of this bill in April of 2019. As you know, we delivered your resolution to our members of Congress in person in Washington in June of 2019,
when 12 of us from Truckee were on Capitol Hill lobbying Congress for this bill. Some of you may know that David Tierman, who was mayor of Truckee at that time, was featured in a Citizens Climate Lobby video on municipal endorsements of the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividends Act. The bill was reintroduced in this session on April 1 by one of its original co-sponsors, Representative Ted Deutsch of Florida, with 26 original co-sponsors, and additional co-sponsors have been walking through his door ever since. Because CCL believes that a bipartisan bill is the strongest bill and will ensure the longevity of carbon pricing, we are working, as is Representative Deutsch, on adding Republican co-sponsors. He introduced the bill without Republicans this time because there is a very robust conversation taking place in Congress right now on climate action. And he wanted this policy to be a part of that conversation as soon as possible. The environment in Congress right now on climate action is very dynamic and very fluid, with many ideas on the table, including carbon pricing. And it's an important time for constituents and businesses and public officials to voice their support for this policy as the most effective, comprehensive, and fair first step we can take, although not the only step, to address climate change. So thank you to the staff for recommending updating Truckee's endorsement, and we're looking forward to your continuing support. Thank you for the opportunity to make this comment.
Thank you, Deirdre. I see one that came in for 6.0. It's an email. We don't need to read those. Pete, I'm acknowledging your public comment that just came in on item 6.3. Thank you for your contribution. Okay, with that, Councilmember Romack, would you care to give us a motion for consent?
I will make a motion that we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay. Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Pallavi.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Henderson.
Yes.
Mayor Klovstad.
Yes.
Councilmember Zabriskie.
Yes.
Councilmember Romack.
Yes.
Could I also just add, I don't think we have to do formal roll calls anymore, right, Judy? That was really for like a Zoom thing. We could just say all in favor.
Correct.
Yes.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Let's try to get us back on track here.
It's definitely a throwback.
Councilmember Pallavi, I've never had the pleasure of doing that before, so look forward to that on item 7.1. Sweet. Okay, we're on to item 7.1 then, and Dan Wilkins is going to be presenting that. This is a public hearing on the use of Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act of 2021, funding to support a transit capital project.
Thank you, Mayor. The council members probably recall at your last council meeting, there was an agenda item on your consent calendar where staff was recommending that we earmark that we request that the CRRSAA funding, which is transit funding, be dedicated to the future construction of a relocated transit center. And there was some questions prior to the council meeting on that. Staff responded to those, and ultimately the council approved that action. So one of the requirements of the grant are that we conduct a public hearing on the use of funds. So that's what we're here for tonight, which is to basically confirm the action of the April 27th meeting and also check one of the boxes on the grant requirement. So very brief background. In October of 2020, the council directed staff to pursue property acquisition of the rail yard North Balloon Track. for a new transit center, and we've spoken a little bit about that location and the rationale for that in the past. In February of 2021, we entered into an agreement with an appraisal firm to appraise the property, and we expect to be back to you as the town council at your next meeting in May with the results of that appraisal, and then request your direction on how we want to move forward from there. As I mentioned, the council authorized the submittal of the CRR SAA grant, and we submitted that prior to the April 30 deadline, and we are now returning on the public hearing. Just a little more background, this is a schematic of the proposed transit center in the north balloon track area of the rail yard. And this is very conceptual in nature, but this is a concept we're working towards. One of the questions that has come up from council has been whether or not this project could be implemented in phases. Staff believes that it could be. The transit center has two basic components. One is the site work, which is effectively curb gutter, sidewalk, paving that would provide the staging area for transit vehicles. And then the second major phase would be construction of buildings on that property that could then provide additional value to it as a transit center. So we think that the combination of this funding as well as some additional grant funding that's been earmarked towards a transit center project on previously could accomplish the bulk of the site work for a project like this. And once the site work's done, this property would actually have initial functionality. It wouldn't have a building on it, but there would be locations for staging of transit vehicles. And we would need to figure out how to use a combination of this site and the existing Truckee depot in concert with one another to advance transportation in the town. So that's where we see ourselves headed. If things went really well and we could come up with funding for the buildings at the same time as the site work, that would be great, but it's not necessary. So the recommendation is that for tonight is that you hold a public hearing to confirm use of Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act of 2021 funds to support site development and construction of a new transit center. And that after the public hearing has been concluded, that you adopt Resolution 2021-24, which would authorize the use of the CRR SAA funds for that purpose. And that's my presentation.
They don't make that easy. CRRSAA funds. All right, thank you, Dan. Let's start at this end. Councilmember Romack, do you have any questions on this item?
No questions. Thanks, though, Dan, on explaining the phasing. That's an exciting aspect. Thank you.
And Councilmember Zabriskie?
I agree with Councilmember Romack. Thank you, and I have no questions.
Vice Mayor Henderson?
No questions. You answered them all in advance. Thank you.
Well, you're off scot-free. Yes, this is our second time seeing this. We know we'll see it again soon. We're just so excited to literally have a stake going in the ground for this happening in the future. It's going to be such a great attribute in addition to our community. So thank you. We do need to, though, motion this. And do we need to do a roll call vote for the resolution, or can that just be?
No, it can just be a single action.
Fabulous. Who would like to give me a motion then?
I will make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2021-24, authorizing use of the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriation Acts funds for that purpose.
And I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. Okay, it passes. And we're not even 2 hours into this, so let's keep going with 7.2. Everybody okay with that? Okay, and I see Shauna making her way, so we'll kind of stall. This is housing program update and proposed guideline updates to the long-term rental grant program. welcome back, Shauna.
Thank you.
While she gets going, Judy, I think just for our mayor's sake here, but what I think we've done in the past is generally you can just do, ayes or yeses or nos. And then if it's anything controversial or we're looking for more specific, if somebody wants to make a point or if we know there's some differing of opinions, then we would generally go to roll call is what we've historically done.
Yes, that's typical.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Just to help you out there.
Okay, so we're all set? Good evening, Council. I'm Shauna Doherty, the Housing Program Manager for the town of Truckee. I'm here tonight to present Agenda Item 7.2, which is a housing program, and tonight specifically, I'm doing a 6-month update on the long-term rental grant pilot program. Before I get started, I wanted to highlight the word pilot on your screen. I put that there as a reminder that this truly is our own program. We designed it, we're the first to do it, it's our own money. So we're 6 months in, which is pretty unusual. Usually we wait till we're about a year into a program. But because it's new and we're figuring it out as we go, we wanted to report back on that. On that, I will do my best to answer the questions, but know that it's a work in progress and we don't have all of the definitive data yet. So the request to council tonight is just to review the report from Landing Locals at the 6-month mark, the staff report, and then consider, based on market conditions and what we're hearing in the field, to expand the AMI income requirements from 120% up to 150%. So by now you're hopefully used to the Mountain Housing Council income bridge. I always like to ground the conversation in this. So, earlier tonight we heard a presentation of a project that is in the orange zone. This bridge represents all of the needs that we have and probably beyond. We have low-income needs, we have middle-income housing needs, and then we're starting to see more and more the needs of people who make a higher income and can't get into the market. As a reminder, this bridge also points to where products and programs best fit. So the Pacific Crest Commons project that we talked about earlier is, a tax credit, affordable housing project that's in the orange. The projects that are kind of opening this year fit in that orange. There's lots of state funding for programs in that area. When you start to get up the bridge into the teal zone, much more limited state funding, and that's where the town comes in, and that's where Measure K comes in and our general funding. And that's really where our ADU program sort of sits and serves, and where our long-term rental grant program is sitting in that teal zone. As a reminder, the 120 for a family of 2, that's about $88,000 for a family of 2, and it goes up to 110 for a family of 4, based on numbers set by the state for Nevada County. So now I have 2 sections. One is just a brief overview of the long-term rental grant program, then I'll do a highlight of the results, and then we'll talk about this recommendation. So again, so in September, the council approved the long-term rental grant program. And to be clear, there were quite a few questions on this. So it was approved as a 3-year program, $130,000 a year, with the caveat that the program would come back to you each year to renew the contract with Landing Locals based on results. We did approve, council did approve a contract with Landing Locals for $55,000 for 1 year, and the funding is coming, like I said, from General Fund and Measure K. It is currently in the CIP, which you'll see next week, for the next 2 years. The confusing part is that the program launched in October, which isn't a perfect lineup with our fiscal year, but April was the 6-month mark. The goal of the program is to unlock our existing housing. So, we always use the line that we can't build ourselves out of our housing. So it's a way to leverage our existing housing, increasing the inventory of long-term rentals. We're really aimed at serving that moderate income household for people that work within the school district. And it also, the timing of this program was at the same time that we as a town were updating our short-term rental ordinance. So we saw it as a way to provide an incentive for people that were sort of on the fence if they wanted a short-term or long-term, and we were hoping this grant would sort of lure them into long-term. So a little bit of how it works. I think we spent a lot of the last 6 months explaining how it works. As a reminder, Landing Locals is, and Colin is on the phone and he's listening. So Landing Locals is a B corporation. So they're based here in Truckee. They serve different communities in Montana and South Lake Tahoe with a similar matching program. So their model is trying to unlock existing housing for local workers. We're the first jurisdiction, like I said, to offer a grant and an income requirement. So what's confusing, I think, to people is that we are not the only client that Landing has. They do serve other clients as well. So how it works is Landing Locals is a partner with us as an administrator. So they take care of all of the marketing. You've seen their ads in Moonshine Inc. and the Tahoe Donner News, and they're constantly getting the word out. I think they've become pretty well known. They're constantly fielding inquiry calls, hundreds of inquiry calls about people that have heard about it and they're interested and they want to know if it fits. And then once people enter the program, they do all of the sort of vetting and making sure that the house is a good fit based on our program criteria, and work with tenants on their income, submitting their documents. They list the home. They give a pool of qualified tenants to the homeowner who ultimately makes the choice, and they help with the leasing. And then our job is we actually check the income. So we're sort of the final say on looking at those income documents and making sure they fit within our requirements. And we check all of the program documents, and then our staff releases grant payments directly 2 times to the homeowners. One when they first sign at 30 days, and then at the end of the 12-month. Landing gets paid for each match that they make. So the landlord gets that additional benefit of the $1,200. Usually that's around the cost of the matching fee. And we as the town absorb that as another enticement to be in this program. So because tonight the subject is about income qualifications, this is how it works now. So the cap to be in this program for the tenant is the household, either related or unrelated, can't make more than 120%. And those are the numbers there for the types. It's based on household size. And then for the landlord, they have to set the rent based on what somebody in the 120 income bracket can afford based on paying no more than 30% of their income, gross monthly income on that rent. And so that's sort of that's a formula we're using, again, to remind you that nobody told us to do that. We're using that. We created that methodology based on sort of how the industry standard is. So the 6 months results, we have secured 10 homes, as you read. Our goal is unlocking 25 homes a year over 3 years to get to 75. We've served 19 people in those 10 homes so far. 18 of them are adults and 1 is a child. Some of the highlights, again, this is pulled from the staff report and the 6 months progress report from Landing Locals, is there's plenty of tenants. We have an abundance of tenants on the wait list. We have 18 homes that are in the pipeline. So that means they're interested and have been pre-vetted to be qualified based on our current requirements. 4 out of the 10 homes that we've unlocked were formerly unpermitted ADUs, so they came through our whole system. They tried, they went through the short-term rental, tried to get permitted, couldn't, or they were in our code compliance, started working with our staff on bringing their unit into compliance, all the while knowing that this was sort of the carrot at the end. Once they got permitted, they could get this $3,000 grant. It looks like in our program we're serving about 80%. If you take all of the people together and combine their incomes, it's about 80 to 100% AMI is the average that we're serving. And it seems to be a draw, again, very little data so far, but of the 10 homes, the income right now seems to fit best for sort of the unrelated households. One thing we learned and we've adjusted is people would tell Colin and Kai that the house or the ADU was permitted, meaning it was like permitted, it was allowed, and then we finally realized that it was not actually permitted. And so when a call comes in for a potential house, the Colin and Kai now understand to ask about the building permits in place, especially with ADUs, and then they contact us and we work to make sure that it actually is a permitted unit before it goes into the system. So that was a lesson learned. Feedback so far from tenants and homeowners. So the tenants, there's just not enough homes. It's very competitive to get in. And so if 5 tenants are sort of picked for, qualify for a particular house, the landlord's going to pick 1 and 3 are going to be unhappy. So there's just never enough homes to serve the need. And it's very competitive. It's seeming that the income cap is too low for some people. So I mentioned that in the staff report that some of our major employers who make over that 120 just can't get in. Pets, a lot of homeowners don't want pets. Most people have pets. And then the rents, we're starting to get that the rents are still high. So it's the flip of what I just said. Some of our wage earners who make just over the 80% are having a hard time with some of the rents. So, and the income qualification process, we talk about AMIs, and it's just, if it's brand new to people, it's still confusing. So Colin and Kai spend a lot of time breaking that down for people. And then the homeowners, which is why we're here tonight, is that the gap for some of the larger houses between what we require the rent to be set at and what they feel like they can get the $3,000 grant is just not enough to get them to enter into the program. And we're really seeing this with the 3+ size, 3-bedroom and above houses in sort of the more expensive neighborhoods. It's not across the board. But we're hearing that. So these are my final slides, which are about our proposal to all of you to think about our recommendation to bump up the AMI. So we all know about this, which are the market conditions, which have been extraordinary over the last, particularly the 6 months. Median house price has gone way up. 72% since last year. So the 2,348 homes sold, it's usually the movement of homes sold is about 1,600 based on the realtor data. So the movement of homes is why we're seeing all those posts on Facebook about people that have been in their rentals and now those rentals are being sold. It's just incredible sales going on, which impacts, of course, the rents are higher. We're seeing them up by as high as $1,000 more a month, $500 to $1,000 from 6 months ago. And then there's just a really low inventory because of the high sales. So people aren't they're just instead of long-term renting, they're selling because they can get a lot of money for them. So the proposal back to the bridge is to move a little bit into the red zone. So we usually cap programs at the 120, and and the reason behind this is, and Colin will chime in, is what we're seeing is homes that we can't bring into this program because they're not comfortable setting the rents at the rates that we need them to be at the 120. And again, this is incremental. We don't think by bumping up to 150, we're suddenly going to have 50 more houses. We think it's just going to be an appropriate fit for some of the houses. Colin's going to tell a story about a house that I'm telling a story, so I'm just going to let him tell a story. But there's just, it gives us the latitude to be able to bring in houses and bring in employees who make over that 120 to just sort of expand the program. This is what it looks like. I don't have a comparison, but one person now, again, a lot of these rents, this doesn't mean that the rents are going to be set at this cap. It means it's a cap, and many times, as you saw from the staff report, the house really sets the rent, right? The neighborhood it's in, the condition, the size. It's just that is to get into the program, you cannot charge more than that. And then based on what the market is showing, Kai and Colin work with that homeowner to set the rent in an appropriate level to fit with a program requirement. So it bumps up the ability for people making a little bit more to get into the program, and then it allows the homeowner who's uncomfortable charging lower rents at these different rates. So the recommendation is to review the 6-month progress report and consider expanding the income qualification cap for the pilot program from 120% to 150 in order to unlock more homes and serve more people. So with that, I was hoping to have Colin just provide a few remarks in tandem to my presentation, if that's okay.
All right. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes, we can.
We can.
Hello, everybody. My name is Colin Froelich, and it's a real honor to be here. Thank you, Shauna and council members. So just as a little background, my wife and I, Kai, run this company, Landing Locals, in our offices in downtown Truckee. And as Shauna mentioned, this program, a pilot program, was developed over a year with discussions with Shauna, and really it's first of its kind. This public-private partnership is really unique. We operate in multiple mountain towns, and I think this is a blueprint for a really innovative way to preserve long-term housing for our local employees. We specifically built this pilot so that we could test and learn and be iterative. So I'm pleased that we have the opportunity to come to you to share, really what's happening in the field in 6 months. And the speed in which we were able to deploy and implement this program, I think, is really commendable. Appreciate the partnership with the town staff and also council to get this approved last year. So as Shauna mentioned, the real estate boom is really impacting our rental market in a serious way. We've been tracking rents for 2+ years. And in the time that Landing Locals has been in existence, we typically maintain a database of renters, groups of renters seeking rentals in kind of the 0 to 3 month window. So upcoming vacancies that they're looking to fill. Right now, Shauna mentioned there are 200 that qualify for the grant program, but overall, our database is of around 470 groups in the North Lake Tahoe Truckee area, representing close to 1,000 adults and close to 2,000 total renters when we include children. Over half these groups, as they indicate when they onboard with us, are being displaced from long-term rentals due to sales or owners moving into their homes full-time. This is up significantly in the last year. And as Shauna mentioned, this is not only a sort of product of the massive real estate boom we're seeing, but also the types of home that are being sold. So in a typical year, seeing 1,500 home sales in the North Lake Tahoe Truckee area is common. And now last year we saw 2,300. The median household price that these are being sold at is up 72% in the last 2 years. And this translated into a lot of long-term rentals being turned over and people being displaced. So to give you a real-life scenario of why we'd like to iteratively adapt the program and bring the income requirement up to 150%, I want to share a real-life example from a 4 p.m. homeowner visit today. A couple in Lower Tahoe Donner
who are moving out of their 3-2 they've owned for 2 years and moving to Washington State for a job relocation. They were very keen and interested to participate in the program. And based on their ownership costs and money they put into the house, they're seeking $3,000 a month for rent and the market conditions for their 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1-car garage in Tahoe Donner. The current guidelines really mean that they would not be able to qualify, a tenant would not be able to qualify for the program. So what we're seeing is desire and interest from these, larger homes, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, et cetera, larger houses. But with the realities of the market and the conditions we're seeing in the rental market, not going after the program. We've had this happen at least 10 times with larger homes. And as Shauna mentioned, this change, this bringing up to 150% AMI is geared at 2 things. So first, we're looking to unlock larger homes. And secondly, we're looking to unlock these homes specifically for families. 80% of our houses in Truckee are single family homes over 3 bedrooms. It's the nature of our housing stock. And the program today is geared more towards ADUs, 1-bedrooms, and smaller houses. Hence what you're seeing with the results we've had to date. So what this looks like is if we make this change, employees that are still considered middle class and moderate income, but are employed at places like Tahoe Forest, Mark Tanner Construction, Placer County, and even the town of Truckee are not being able to participate in the program for the kind of houses they want and the income they make. Our hope is that if we can iterate this program, we unlock incremental houses for the pilot, and that I'm able to come back to you at the 1-year mark and say that this success did not take away from anything, but rather was an additive addition and iteration to the program. And that's all really I have to share. I'd be happy to take questions from council and Shauna as well. So I'm going to go back on mute and stop my video, or I guess I'll stop my video. And if you need me to come back on, I will.
Thank you so much, Colin. That was a great example, and it's good for us to understand some of those specifics. Councilmember Pallavi, I'm assuming you have some questions on this one. We did have quite a robust list of questions in advance, but I have a feeling we still have a few more.
Yeah, I think they're pretty brief, and thanks, Colin. That's some pretty sobering rental data, and it certainly speaks to, kind of what I hear and see on the ground. So thank you for that actual physical data. I guess my questions, which I sort of already asked, but let's just ask them again for the sake of it. Why aren't we pushing harder, and why aren't we going further? In terms of why don't we, 470 groups, 2,000 people are looking for homes in the next 0 to 3 month time frame. We're going to hit maybe 20 of those people in the next 6 months. And I know we're at a 6 month. I know it's a pilot program. Why are we feeling like we're taking baby steps and not big, giant leaps of faith? And that's a question to you, Shauna, from a staff recommendation standpoint.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Great question. I will probably put Andy on the spot. So it's a balancing act between using public dollars for public good, public benefit, and where is the ceiling on that? So that is part of the reason that it's being brought to you is it's a little bit of uncharted territory. We've done so it's a little bit of uncharted territory to use taxpayer dollars to serve programs for moderate income, which is traditionally it's 100% lower income up to 120, and so this is uncharted territory. So, and also the market's changed, and so we're having to rethink about where the need is, and so I think. Also, I will say that we always think about our housing programs as a suite, a toolbox. So tonight we're talking about this program. It's never meant to be the program to create all the inventory and solve all our housing programs. It's one of the programs in our toolbox, and it's innovative and it's new. So we didn't go that big in the beginning because we wanted to test. So I don't know if you wanted to add anything else.
Well, I mean, I can add that, I mean, in general, anytime the town spends money on anything, there has to be some kind of public benefit, some kind of community benefit. I think in this case, that's kind of a non-issue. It would be very easy to make findings showing that there's community benefit to be had from spending almost whatever you like on housing. So that, I don't think that's any kind of obstacle. I think it's more a question of what would the council like to do? Because certainly anything, just about anything that you do in this community for housing is benefiting the community.
Thank you, guys. Do Tahoe Truckee Workforce Housing Agency employees have equal access to this program just like everybody else, correct?
Correct.
And are they matching any type of funding that the town has been matching? Are they contributing to the program, or are they're just employees are just an equal resident, I'm assuming, right?
Correct. That nobody else is contributing other than the town of Truckee, and their employees are benefiting when they fit the income requirements. But many of them are being turned away because they make above that.
And do we have the ability, maybe this is a question for you, Andy, to exclude a certain subset based on membership in a different entity, for example? Like, could we exclude employees of members of that JPA?
I suppose you might be able to. We need to really think through that. I mean, because is employment actually giving them some other opportunities for housing, or is it more kind of theoretical at this point? I mean, I think
right. No, right now it'd be theoretical, right? Like, I want them to pony up and match our investment. So how do we do that? Well, we don't allow their employees to qualify for our program that we're funding.
Right. You could frame that as our program would be open to anyone who is not otherwise eligible for some kind of employer-based program. We could do it that way, but I would suggest that it be not until there's actually a program.
Right.
I don't think it would be.
And we wouldn't want to amend the existing contract, I'm also assuming. Our existing contract lasts for this year, and we're just making one amendment to it, or do we have ability to change that?
Well, we can amend it any way that Landing is willing to negotiate with us.
Got it. And then I just have a question for Colin, if he's still there. That's so awkward. Sorry, I'll just look straight. Talk to the wall. Colin, if you can hear me, how do you rank or prioritize applicants within your system? For example, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath comes up. You've got 50 people, that qualify. Where does it go from there? How does that work? Colin?
Yep, I'm here.
There you are. Thank you.
Hi, Dave.
Hi.
Yeah, great question. I'll start with that one, and I have some input on the other two as well. I think the thing to remember here is that Landing Locals is not the person that makes the selection of the house. The homeowner does. So what we do is we have this renter profile product that allows us to see everything about a potential renter before we put them in front of the homeowner. And what homeowners do is tell us what they're looking for in a renter, things like term of lease and pets, no pets, number of cars, that sort of thing. And so as people qualify, it's currently based on when their renter profile was submitted. So we do have some people that have been in the system for, say 6 months or a year. Currently, it's ranked based on when you submitted your renter profile, and then that order is presented to the homeowner, typically in batches of 3 to 5. Shauna and I are in discussions, based on our own sort of evaluation of the program, to maybe have that be more of a rubrics where, that is one factor in terms of ranking. Ultimately, it does come down to what the homeowner chooses, and we find that it's best to give them batches of sort of 3 to 5 candidates at a time, based on a number of factors, including when they applied and created their renter profile. And then just to get back to your question, while I'm still active on the screen about why not go bigger, faster, stronger, I'll give you an example of what we're up against in terms of sobering headwinds on the real estate market. I had an owner call me who had purchased a home recently, and she had said that she wants to rent it out because she bought it on 1031 exchange, and she gave me the address. So I looked up the public records in the Zillow, like we all do when we hear an address. And the house was sold to her for $850,000. She said she purchased it as a exchange, but the house had sold, a 3-2 in Tahoe Donner had sold 2 years earlier for $500,000 and 9 years earlier for $200,000. So what we're up against is those owners that have purchased homes anywhere in the last, let's call it 2 to 30 years, are extremely enticed to sell right now. So we have incredibly low inventory of rentals because every realtor in the area is foaming at the mouth to sell their homes of these owners that have owned for an extended period of time. And this is, an all-time peak sale moment because of the incredible misbalance on demand and supply on the sale side as well. Any realtor would say that it's much better right now to be in the position of listing a house than trying to find a home for a buyer because there is no inventory and it's frothy and crazy. So I would say my answer to you is if we want to go bigger, we could talk about making the incentive larger, maybe shifting it instead of being per house, but per employee, local employee served. Sean and I had some ancillary recommendations that we did not present tonight, which could certainly be brought back to council if you desired. Something like a larger grant and making it per person. So let's say a 3-bedroom house rents out to 4 local employees. Maybe the homeowner is incentivized with a $10,000 grant. And if that was something the council's interested in, we could map out a way to go bigger, and that may unlock more homes. That's answers to a couple of your questions. I'll go back on mute now.
Thank you, Colin. Super appreciated. Thanks for being here tonight. No further questions from me at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Henderson.
Thank you. I have a few questions. How many homeowners have expressed interest over the past 6 months but didn't end up participating for one reason or another?
10.
10. And of those 10, was AMI level the barrier for all 10 of them? Okay. Do we think we can meet our original goal of unlocking 25 homes if we expand AMI to 150% this year? Yes. Okay.
Your mic's not on yet.
Yes, that's the intent behind it. Again, honestly, I'll be totally honest, when we started this program, I didn't know if we'd get one.
Yeah.
So I'm thrilled that we have 10, and we do meet every 2 weeks, and we're making iterations, and this is one of them to help us track to that 25 based on the market conditions and setting ourselves up for success.
And what is our goal for years 2 and 3?
So we set it 20. We did 25, 25, 25 based on putting a stake in the ground. Okay. But so far we're hoping 25 again. Our ultimate goal is that we're creating that one-time investment of the $3,000, and that it's a good experience for the landlord and the homeowner, and they keep their tenants, and we get more months out of our initial investment. But again, we're changing how we measure success as well, just based on what we're talking about.
Sure, absolutely. And we're trying to unlock housing stock, but it still has to be affordable for people. And I know we've talked a lot about how with rising rents, this is really challenging. So one of the questions that I had posed in advance, which I do kind of want to reiterate, is just whether modifying the AMI is the only part of the solution, or if part of the solution is, for example, that increased incentive to attract more homeowners to participate, and then also to keep those rents lower. So I guess my question is really just what information or what data are we going to collect over the next 6 months to help us determine whether that needs to be part of this program's pivot?
So part of the data is what you're seeing that was presented in the staff report, just, number of people, AMI level. Colin and Kai track all of the inquiries that come in, including people, why they're not choosing the program, either as a tenant or a landlord. We did build into the program a 6-month survey. So we're checking in. They started the first one last week. That was our first home and our first 6-month check-in with the tenant and the landlord to ask them how the program's going for them. So that's more data that we're collecting. But if you have additional ideas on other data that we should be collecting, Colin and Kai are constantly checking, probably on a daily, what market is bearing. And so if there's additional data that we should be collecting, that would be helpful.
I guess sort of relatedly, just how many renters have been interested, but who explicitly couldn't afford those rents? Do we have those numbers, or will we have those numbers in, another 6 months?
Yeah, so that was in the staff report, that there's 20 families and couples. It wasn't, we can give you the exact data on that. I think Colin could probably chime in on that. But I asked them when this started to come up to keep track of the tenants, where they were coming from, what their AMIs are, and I said, would the 150 serve those 20 that we're not able to serve now if we were to bump it up? And the answer was yes. That's how we came up with that 150.
Thank you, Shauna. I really appreciate it.
Councilmember Zabriskie, would you like to add some?
Thank you. Shauna, when we updated the last housing element, about that time, the former manager, Tony Lashbrook, prepared a summary of Mountain Housing Council's studies, and he titled it Housing Crisis. And we now know if that was a housing crisis, this is a very dire situation. I fully appreciate the people at all income levels going above 150% AMI are in need of housing. At the same time, when I look at the staff report, what I see so far in the staff report fails to persuade me that we need to change, and I'm asking my questions in that context. I'm looking at the numbers, and Colin Frolick just gave an example of a homeowner who wanted to charge $3,000 a month for his 3-bedroom house. And that's consistent with what's shown in the staff report of $1,150 being the current average charge per room. At $3,000 a month, though, the 120% AMI shows that someone at that income level, if they paid only 30% of their income for rent, would have $2,773 to pay. And adding $250 a month from the $3,000 subsidy would allow them to pay that rent at 30% of income. And it would be even easier for a family of 5 or a family of 6 to pay that rent. So it makes it look to me like people at 120% AMI can afford $3,000 a month in rent. And I hate to change horses in midstream, only 6 months into a 3-year project. I hate to change course so quickly to increase the people who would be eligible. I think because of this super crisis, we do need to do an expansion, but not at the expense of the people who only make up to 120% AMI. So what am I missing here? Isn't it just a matter of staying on course? Aren't we going to keep on track if we have a cap of 120%? And wouldn't the alternative, increasing it to 150% AMI, reduce the number of houses available to those at 120%?
So I put in the staff report the expectation that this question came up, and we've talked about for the last 6 months. Are we diminishing the service to those in the 120 and below by expanding up? And really what we're trying to do is, again, we keep using the word iterative, to bring in a few more houses that just don't fit that and a few more people. So it's not, and we would obviously continue to track who we're serving in the houses that are coming in. But I think what we're really trying to do is be responsive to the market, and we're missing out on houses. We're seeing people say, oh, that's the rent I have to charge. I'm not interested in your program. So we're missing out on that house. And so we believe, and I'm bringing in landing locals from the conversations we've had, that there will be products, there will be homes, ADUs and smaller homes that will naturally still serve people below 120, because that is what the market will bear for that product. And so we're just expanding the AMI to bring in a wider range of options. But we don't know. It's our best guess.
Councilmember, if I could just add on, and Shauna, correct me if I'm wrong, but perhaps to address your concern, you could phase, or you could rank, if a applicant met the 120% AMI, they could be given first priority. If there isn't somebody that meets the criteria to rent a house at the 120% AMI, is when we could open it up to a 150 AMI. And that way we aren't jeopardizing renting to somebody in the lower income bracket, if that makes sense.
Right. Or we could take the remaining, so we have 15 grants still remaining for the year. And we could say that we're going to test 5 of them. We're going to make 5 of those grants available for homes in the above 120 to 150, and leave the remaining 10 at our 120 to stay the course.
I want to see those 25 homes filled. I want to see the grant money spent in order to provide housing for these people. I'm interested in logistics for something along the line of what our town manager is suggesting. I'm wondering how that would work, and I'm not talking about immediately setting aside 5 homes for people earning above 120%. I'm thinking more in terms of you fully advertise over the next 3 months or 4 months, and if you don't fill 120% AMI people into 25 homes, then you release it for 2 months to people earning up to 150% AMI. But I think you're acting precipitously, especially to change it right now, especially after saying we're on track. And the numbers you've provided us, again, I'm talking about the numbers that have been provided in the staff report. Mm-hmm. They tell me that people at 120% can pay $3,000 for a 3-bedroom house. And given 200 tenants signing up for the project, the numbers to me tell me those people are out there.
Yeah, we're not having a problem with the tenant side. We're having a problem with the inventory and attracting more homes to join our program.
But you're also telling me it's because the program does not allow people to pay $3,000 a month for a home. That's the anecdote I get from Colin.
Right. So you're saying change the ratio of what people can pay who make 120 in order to stretch to those higher rent homes.
You know what I'm almost saying is come back in a month and show me the numbers that actually demonstrate why a homeowner who's willing to rent a 3-bedroom house for $3,000 can't be matched with a tenant who's either a 4-person or 5-person family.
So what you're getting at is you're challenging the methodology we're using of the 30%, right? So we're saying the affordability for somebody in 120 is based on that their gross income, that they can't, that we're capping the rent based on somebody not paying more than 30% of their gross income on rent. And so that's,
No, this could be a situation where something is hitting me right in the face and I don't see it, all right?
Yeah.
I'm just doing numbers. In Table 2, I'm looking at the staff report, Table 2, someone at 120% AMI, moderate income, can afford to pay $2,773 per month in rent. And if I then add the subsidy of $250 per month, that adds up to over $3,000 per month, which means they can afford, under our standards.
The subsidy's not being passed on. I think that's the confusion.
Yeah,
The subsidy is not being passed on to the renter. The subsidy of $3,000 is for the homeowner to convince them that this is a good idea.
Right, which averages $250 a month.
But that doesn't go back towards rent.
Well, it goes to the homeowner.
Right, so it's a matter of the lens you're looking through then, I guess. The homeowner's like, hey, I'm pocketing this because not only would I be making $3,000 a month, I could be making $10,000 a month potentially. So I'm sacrificing my $3,000.
We don't, Councilmember Zabriskie, we don't consider the $3,000 an offset to the rent. So, and that's why I think that is where the confusion is. Yeah. That is really something we've given to the homeowner to say, thank you for not short-term renting and opening this up to a long-term rental for locals. So we aren't factoring that $250 into the calculation the way you are.
And even more so, it's capitalizing on the actual value of the renter being a local employee or whatever they are, because they have to be a local employee. So they could go out to the market and do whatever they want.
Okay, let me, maybe Colin can help me here. When the homeowners said they wanted $3,000 a month, did they mean total, both the amount from the home, but the amount from the town, plus what the renter pays? Or were they saying they want the renter to pay $3,000 a month and, oh, they'll take the subsidy too?
That's the second is correct.
Well, let me ask Colin if that's what happened.
Yes, it's the latter. So as Dave mentioned, and I didn't catch who actually said it as well, it is not a rental offset. What we're seeing is that these homeowners are participating in the program because they love the idea of renting to a local employee, but this is an incentive to not keep the home on the short-term rental market or keep it as a ski lease or keep it vacant or sell it. So this incentive really is this idea of a one-time cash infusion. And one thing hopefully shine through in the staff report and the program guidelines is also landing local services are provided for free as well. Typically that's a $1,200 to $1,500 service. So really what I say to homeowners when they say I'm interested in the program, but couldn't I rent my house out to tech workers for $5,000 a month? I say you could, but this program is, you're responding to this for a reason. So let's talk about the nuts and bolts of what you need to make it work from your carrying cost and your cost basis. So for this real life example from today, they said we had in our mind that we'd rent it for $3,000. We know we could get more, but that incentive is really what we're going after. And I literally told them I'm going to be talking to council about it tonight because I'd love to keep you, renting to locals and not putting it on Zillow yourself and renting it out to a remote tech worker for $5,000-$6,000 a month, which they definitely could get if they put it on Zillow.
Okay, I'm still going to think of this as a homeowner who's going to be happy with the money regardless of where it comes from. And so what I'm hearing is the actual rent. What for the homeowner would be the equivalent of rent is more than $3,000. They're really asking for more than $3,000 because they're getting the additional $250.
Well, Councilmember, too, remember that this is a one-time grant, right?
Yeah, so it's a one-year lease.
But they could lease longer, or they could continue on in the program, and they're getting $3,000 for that period.
I mean, the $3,000, to be honest, is like it's a marketing thing to get people to pay attention. The numbers don't add up to, they could get $5,000 or $6,000 for the rental, or more, it doesn't equate, it gets them interested. And it gets them to have a conversation, and it's enough to make, some of them probably think about it as you're thinking about it. I've had conversations with people like that, but mostly it's to get in the door, and then we have our program guidelines that set the ceiling on the rent.
And I think, Councilmember, just to clarify further, that if we keep this at the 120% AMI, we are likely not to open up 25 homes. We could, but we have a higher chance of doing that and meeting that goal if we go to the 150.
Yeah. So the example that we keep talking about is per our program guidelines. And Colin, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe our program guidelines would set the rent at $2,600, right? 27. If they were following today's program guidelines, the house that he talked to the people at 4:00, the 3,000 would be beyond our current guidelines.
Which we could change.
Right, which is what we're talking about tonight. If we change the guidelines.
No, okay, let me address it this way. More than half the state's renters are rent burdened, correct? More than half pay more than 30% of their income in rent.
Yes. So, yes.
Why? We could eliminate the 30% requirement and face reality. Most people pay more than 30% of their income for rent and still keep it at 120% AMI.
We could. It is what number would we choose?
Oh, you just eliminate the 30%. It's 120% AMI.
I think, Councilmember Zabriskie, we're trying to keep in that inclusive community, and understanding the cost of living here beyond just rent is very high. 30% is the threshold that meets the general standard, so that's what we're trying to accommodate. You're right that we could adjust that, but that just has a ramification down the road for something else in terms of either transit or working here or food or whatever the case may be, electricity, power,
Definitely.
all of that.
Yeah, and I mean again, I'm going to go back to the word pilot, so we can design what we want, but every single, it's hard to talk to prospective homeowners about setting rent if we don't have a set of criteria that we use, whether it's right or wrong or exact, whether it's 30% or 40%, but we have to have a consistent methodology that we used to talk to homeowners about how to set the rent versus, they come in and they set the rent and it serves, how do we know what to set the rent at if we don't come up with a percentage based on an AMI? We need that as, to create the structure of the program. So everyone's shaking their head like I know exactly what you're talking about. We are recommending that we focus on the AMI to get to that and stick with the 30% for now, to continue forward to get to the 25 units is what our goal is, as our best guess moving forward to get there.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for bearing with me.
Yeah, I think it's a good point.
And these are all great things, fuel for thought for the future.
We have budget coming up next week.
That too. Councilmember Romack.
Thank you. One question, just to clarify, so currently with the income caps, and we'll say if we go to 150, I just want to clarify that for a married couple or related adults, the cap is your two combined incomes. So I'm going to use, say you each make $60,000 a year. So your combined total is 120, so you'd make over 150 AMI. But for unrelated adults, it's the average. So if you both make 60,000, it's 60,000 is what they look at as your income? Okay. And so it did look like from Colin's report that has led to less families being able to join this program. Is that correct too? So I know that's not being recommended tonight, but I think that's definitely something for us to consider moving forward, because I know all of us who look at Truckee Tahoe people every day or talk to people on the street, we're consistently seeing families who are losing their rentals. And so again, it's great. I was an unmarried person living with roommates for a long time here, that we're finding housing for those people, but we also need to make sure we are looking for our families as well. So that's my only question.
So just to clarify, is that comment that you like the methodology? So we're using two methodologies to come up with what the household income is, and one for families related and one for unrelated, right? Because we have industry standard for related, and we had to create our own for unrelated because that doesn't exist aside from what we're doing here. So that was, which one do you like better? And when we come back in a year, which is not that far away, we can bring forward recommendations for changes because we do see that as a topic coming up. So would you like to see the moving forward, the guidelines measure income based on the way we do unrelated households versus?
I see Jen taking her mask off.
I'm just suggesting that we stick with the one recommendation that we have now. We can revisit that with council later, Shauna. Thank you.
Thank you. That's my only question.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Yeah, clearly, what rang through loud and clear in both the staff report and in the responses to the questions is this is a pilot program. We are building the plane as we're trying to fly it, and learning as we go. I think this is clearly something that Landing's Local and our staff found in their research and in their feedback, that there's something that we can do to adjust and to further benefit the community with this shift. I think there's probably a lot more that we could do. I see the challenge with this in so many ways. It's like we're just falling behind in the race because the housing market is exploding faster than we can keep up. This $3,000 credit, it seemed like a lot when we approved it. And yes, I know. Oh, okay. And so, but it doesn't feel like it is where the market is now. So where I'd like to understand in going forward with this is similar to what Vice Mayor Henderson said, was how do we figure out from here where we need to be so that we are not continually falling behind? Because you have to come up with these recommendations and bring this to council. And then by that time, we already feel like we're so far behind. So how are we going to get ahead? How do we figure out where it's going to be in 6 months or in a year? And what we need to do in order to expand this program for then?
Well, tonight is our best guess at how to set ourselves up for that. So collecting the data like I talked about and bringing back at the 1-year mark additional programmatic and guideline changes, and then expanding the AMI. I mean, I wouldn't be here tonight if I didn't think that this was something that we're seeing in the field that's going to help us move towards our goal, and that I feel like we're doing everything we can to set ourselves up. We're not going to keep up. We're not going to be able to solve our housing crisis with this program, but I do feel like we're collecting data and talking about changes that we'd like to bring to you at the 12-month mark, but we didn't feel comfortable doing that with the amount of data we had at this point.
And just to be clear, when you keep talking about the 12-month mark, that's not 12 months from now, that's 6 months from now.
October.
And so then maybe to try to drill down a little bit further, are there market analysis, because in our staff report, there's this great comparison of how much per room rent was in May of 2020 versus June of 2020 versus March of 2021. Are we projecting that out? Is it possible to do that, to be looking at where we're going to be a year from now for this next update?
Like 5 months.
Oh, you're off. Your microphone's off.
So we'll be back to you in about 5 months.
Okay.
But
whatever we approve in 5 months is going to be the next 6 months program, right?
It'll be the next year.
Okay.
So I can't answer that question. I don't know if rents are going to go up $500 a month, but then I don't know what the market's going to do. But Colin and Kai, again, are keeping an eye on that daily, and so.
And all we can do is chart the points on the graph and hope that the line is straight and not exponential.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that we are very interested in this idea of shifting away from the house and the rent to the people served, and that could be part of the solution that takes the pressure off of that.
I am really interested in that too, because, renting your home to one person versus 5 person is obviously a very different impact. So there should be an equal benefit or bonus, it seems. Okay. Any other questions from council?
I would just add, if I can, sorry, Councilmember, it's like doing a forecast or a 5-year forecast when we talk about our budget, right? None of us have a crystal ball to know. If we look back on the last 16 months, we wouldn't have guessed we were going to be in this kind of environment either with a global pandemic. So it's responding to the conditions. There's nothing that prohibits us from coming back in 4 months if we see some drastic change and have a great idea on how to react to that and provide a solution to that. So, we commit to the 6-month check-in, but if we need to come back sooner, we can. If we see some other dramatic change that nobody could have predicted, we might be in a situation where people start going back to their original hometowns, those that came to move here. We just don't know, right? So I would keep that in mind and also emphasize what Shauna said in the beginning, that this is one program in a suite of programs. That's the complement of programs that we offer. It's the complement of programs that even the Truckee Tahoe Workforce Agency offers for their employees. And we have an application request in to become part of that. And we want to serve all of our workforce. So those that are members of the organizations that belong to that and those that are not. And that's where we get some of these different income ranges and try to have different programs to address the various income ranges. So we don't look at it so much as, does this employee work for this agency or not? It's, how can we get this person into a house is really our goal, and that's our regional goal.
I think that's actually the perfect answer, Jen, right there, is just you will come back to us when there's something different, because we also have multiple achievable housing complexes opening up within the next 6 months. And so that could have a shift in how this program is serving our community as well.
New units coming. Our EDU program is another piece of this. We have a couple other programs internally we're looking at and trying to figure out how to formulate to bring forward to you as well if we can. So it's a constant conversation with multiple solutions.
Great, thank you. Did you have something else?
I do, and Colin, if you don't mind joining us, I have 2 really quick questions, I promise. And while Colin joins us, I apologize for interrupting you. I thought you were going into discussion there mode, but it was just a longer question, so I apologize for that interruption. Colin, are you there, by any chance? Or maybe Shauna.
He's back.
Oh, he is. Just a quick question. In the example you gave us tonight, and in some of the other examples of those 10 properties who did not meet the 120, but yet might have been served in the 150, anecdotally, are you able to tell us if did they go to STR? Did they just go to the regular open rental market? Any anecdote on kind of where those homeowners end up?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm happy to follow up with a more detailed response by house. I track every call I get. And I'll give you one example, a Boulders condo that was listed trying to find a long-term rental renter for the long-term rental grant program. A little bit of a mouthful there. We had it out for almost a month, and none of the candidates that came through were suitable for the landlord. This is one of the tricky parts about it. This is an example of a house where they had very limited parking. It was a 3-bedroom, but there was only 2 parking spots deeded to the property, and they were very strict on even the type of a car that could be in the driveway, couldn't be a big truck, couldn't fit in the driveway. So they went through quite a few candidates that ended up not working out for various reasons. And they wanted to stick to their guns on renting this place out at the rent they wanted. They ended up renting to a JPA nurse and her daughter. Tahoe Forest Hospital JPA employee and her daughter, but did not qualify for the grant because the nurse made too much money with her family size. And so that's an example of, we always try to still rent to the local workforce. If you look on Landing Local site, we have a tiered approach. Tier 1 being locally employed and already living here. That's who we prioritize always for all properties. And so what happens is they don't go back to the short-term rental market. They open up to the sort of broader public. And sometimes we have seen it where no local employees qualify for, so then maybe it's a person already living here but working for a remote job, or working in Reno where the wages could be higher. And so, yeah, I'm not seeing of those 10 any go back to the short-term rental market. When people engage with me, they are interested in going longer term, and they often express interest in the program. But then what we're seeing, and there was a lot of really good discussion that I wish I could have chimed in for, but what we're seeing is the larger homes, these 3-bedroom plus homes, end up going on the open market, and there's not the local employee requirement. And so, of those 10 that I got, some decided just to do it on their own. Some decided to work with Landing Locals and didn't necessarily have the requirement both on the rental cap or the employee restriction. So what I like about moving this program to up to 150% AMI is that then we are able to say yes to more of those homeowners. This is, again, additive homes in the program and gets us closer to our goal of 25 for the year. I'd love to even be able to do more than 25 in a year, come back to you and say we need more money to do more homes. To your point, go bigger, go faster. I would love that. And I think this is a step in that direction. Tonight is just one item that we brought to you for simplicity's sake, but there's been some great discussion about other ways in which we could do that. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you. And then just really quickly, does anything prohibit through this program a private match? So, for example, a business or group of businesses want to come in and provide a $3,000 match. So now the incentive is up to $6,000, for example. Is that prohibited, or is that possible?
I suppose it's possible. That has not been brought to my plate or my attention. I will say a few of the homeowners that have matched have actually found their own tenants. So basically they said, hey, I heard about this program and my neighbor wants to rent the house because they're being displaced. Would they qualify? We take them through the same exact criteria to verify income. As Shauna said, there's a final check from the town. That is not prohibited. So that's the only sort of private match that's happened. It would not go on our site. It would not be brought in the order of the renter profile submitted, but there's been no additional funding provided to those homeowners to do a private match.
And there's nothing that stops that from happening per se, because Landing Locals is the operator of the program. So if a private business or something wanted to try to do something like that, that's an option. Yeah. Great. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Interesting thought. Lynn, do we have any public comment?
No.
Wonderful. Okay, so back to council deliberation. Should have just kept your mask off.
Okay, if you want me to.
I support this. I prefer the unrelated methodology. I'll just throw that in there. And I'll leave it at that and not. And I look forward to, in September or October, when this program does come back to us, sort of being ready to act and maybe have a menu of options that are, different aggressiveness levels that maybe hit on also some project partners, for example, but at the very least, sort of be ready to act. fact, not necessarily come back in a year and say, hey, how did we do? Okay, and now it's going to take us 2 more months to come back. I'd like us to come back at that point, and talk about this program at that time, and see how we do over the next 6 months. And yeah, let's use all that money up. I'm on board. Thank you. Thank you for this update.
I will just say I'm a proponent of continuous improvement. I think a pilot program is the perfect place to be able to do that. And what I'm hearing from you, Shauna, and Colin, who are on the ground doing this work every single day, is that increasing that upper AMI threshold from 120% to 150% will unlock more homes. And that's really what we're trying to do here. So I'm also supportive. I'm ready to move on it. And I do love the idea of having a menu of options in another 6 months, kind of going from what's the least aggressive, sort of, the minimal, all the way to the most aggressive. If we want to unlock more than 25 homes in years 2 and 3, what does that actually look like, and what do we have to do? So I'm excited to continue that conversation.
Councilmember Zabriskie?
My concerns remain that the numbers I see in the staff report, taking into account the characterization, the description of how the subsidy is viewed, even taking that into account, I'm not persuaded that we don't have enough tenants and potential landlords out there that can meet. I'm disturbed that we don't have an alternative, some middle ground that protects the 120% AMI applicants, because I see an increase to 150% AMI as essentially being tantamount to all the remaining homes being rented to people that make more than 120% AMI. I think we should be holding firm on the existing program, get a year's worth of data, nail down why it's not working. I'm getting the impression it's because most of the housing stock in our community is larger, has large floor area, a lot of rooms. They're nicer homes. Anyway, so I think it's too soon to shift. What I'd really like to see is a new program that hits the 120% to 150% population, because they need housing too. I don't like seeing the lower income people sacrificed to the people who have a higher income. So I'm open to any kind of modification to what's being proposed, whether it's a cap on the number that could be at 150% or something else.
Thank you, Councilmember Zabriskie. Let's get Councilmember Romack's comments, and then maybe we can come back to that discussion.
Thank you. Thank you, Shauna and Colin. This is such an innovative program and exciting that the town, started this. I agree with what Vice Mayor Henderson said. I think a pilot program is a great opportunity to, make adjustments as needed. So I am supportive of increasing this to 150 AMI. I think this crisis we're in, global pandemic, is not anything anyone foresaw. So adjusting the program to be able to fill more homes is important at this time. But I would also, as the mayor and vice mayor talked about, just more data. The more data we have in 6 months would be great, so we can really understand how, what we're missing, other populations we're not thinking about, maybe can speak to some of the concerns that Councilmember Zabriskie had. So thank you again. And then I will just say I would be supportive of doing the unrelated calculation on AMI as well. But I'm in favor of moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. So Shauna, can you just go over real briefly again the difference between those two, the unrelated and the related? It's the difference between the average and the combined of their income, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's not on the table tonight for the discussion, but yes, how we look at the combined income.
Okay, great. I think both you and Jen had some great ideas in terms of how to make sure that if we move to the 150% AMI, we are not losing, or, we're not going to make somebody in the 120 range miss out on that opportunity. Can you touch on those again?
Sure. I think I had suggested that we could make sure that the 120% AMI group was the first priority, and only if there was not a applicant that met that criteria with a house that fit them, would we look at 150% AMI. I'll look to Colin and Shauna to see if that's in practice okay to do, or easy for them to implement. I think Shauna had suggested if there's an interest in capping, maybe we only provide 5 of those remaining 15 left to 150% AMI. And I suppose you could blend the two as well, say 120% AMI priority, but we're not willing to go over 150% AMI for the remaining 15. You could do a blend of those as well. And Shauna can add anything else.
Yeah, so the second option that Jen mentioned, where we, of the 15 grants, make, we have that with one of our ADU loan products. We have one that's set at 60% and one that's set at 120. So we certainly could make the remaining 15 earmark 10 for 120 and 5 for 150. The challenge with the you have to remember, we set the rent based on the AMI. So we can't put 120 people in a 150 house, because it doesn't, the methodology doesn't, the rent setting doesn't work. So we have to have the tenants that
so
make.
It's going to happen naturally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I see that now. Thank you. Any other questions on that? I think we have a consensus, it looks like. So does anybody have a recommendation to bring forward?
I'll jump in. I would recommend that we expand the income, or make a motion that we expand the income qualification cap for the pilot program to 150 in order to unlock more homes and serve more people.
I'll second. Oops, sorry.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Yes, I oppose.
Your mic's off.
I oppose.
I figured as much. All right. Thank you very much, Shauna, Colin, if you're still there. I really appreciate it. I think this is a great discussion and a lot of future data points to collect. Why don't we take a 10-minute break? So it is 7:30 now. We will come back at 7:40. Thank you.
Us to move that forward.
Okay, bringing us back together. Are we online? All right. We're back in session. So now we are on item 7.3, which is Legacy Trail, Brockway Road, Multi-Use Trail Connection Construction Award Contract, C2107. And Becky Picard is here to share the story of this bid with us.
Thank you very much, and it's really nice to see everyone in person. So I have actually two construction contract awards to present tonight. The first one is the Legacy Trail Brockway Road project. This is a project that would build a multi-use 8 to 10 foot wide path along the south side of Brockway Road between Palisades Drive and South River Street, and actually provide a connection up to the sidewalks that go across the Truckee River. It also includes some storm drain system improvements, and some retaining walls and repaving of the road and striping, and also some replacement of some curb ramps. And really this project has been made possible by a local partnership program, or LPP grant, that we received through the California Transportation Commission, or the state of California. So we bid this project, and we received only one bid from FW Carson in the amount of just under $2.3 million. And that was approximately twice what the engineer's estimate was. And so there's a lot of discussion in the staff report. There's some reasons why we think the bid came in high. The timing, we're hearing that contractors are busy. So we didn't have a competition. We only had one bid. And then also it's labor and material costs are high right now. There seems to be a regional shortage of labor in the area as well, and just a high overall demand for construction services. When you take the project bid and apply the 10% contingency that we usually apply for construction contracts, and then construction support, which is staff time, materials testing, things like that, the total cost is just under $2.6 million. We actually don't have a currently adopted budget because we received the grant funds for this more recently. And so originally we had put this project out to bid thinking we'd be able to fund about half the project with grant funds. But now that we have this higher bids, we do recommend the staff is recommending moving forward with the bid this year. For one reason, we're not sure that we would necessarily get better bids next year, but there's also sort of the idea of getting this project open now and open to the public has some benefit, and it's worth potentially some additional costs. If we did rebid it next year, we might get lower bids. There's actually probably a good chance that we would get slightly lower bids just because we would have more competition. But what we put together in the staff report is a a budget to fund the project. So the LPP grant would fund $630,000 worth of the project. And then Measure V sales tax would fund the paving and drainage improvements, because that's that's basically the eligible use of Measure V funds. Measure R, which is related to trail construction, would fund the portion of the trail or the project that's actually in the Truckee Trails and Bikeways Master Plan, the adopted Truckee Trails and Bikeways Master Plan, which is really the part that goes from Palisades Drive to Old Brockway, and that's really part of the Legacy Trail. After that, the Legacy Trail and the plan continues out towards like the Truckee Springs parcel through Cottonwood. Then the utility reimbursement is sort of a set cost, and so the recommendation from staff is to fund the remainder, which is $364,000 with general funds. If the council decides to award this project tonight, we would anticipate that we would start construction early June and hopefully be done in October of 2021. And just, this is in the staff report, the council priorities that this project would meet was obviously the infrastructure investment, but also climate and greenhouse gas reduction. It's providing non-motorized transportation modes. It's actually really a key connection that you'll get, not only connects the Legacy Trail and Regional Park to downtown Truckee, but also provides a good connection to the Sierra Meadows neighborhood. So with that, the recommendation tonight would be to award the project to FW Carson in the amount of $2,270,000 $1,490. Authorize a 10% contingency. Authorize the town engineer to approve contract change orders or changes to unit quantities within the approved contingency amount. And then also create the CIP budget that would fund the project as outlined in the staff report. And that really concludes my presentation, so I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Becky. I'm going to start on this end. Councilmember Roback, you have any?
Quick question. Thank you. You answered a lot of my questions in advance, so I appreciate that. But since we'll be using some Measure V and Measure R funds that we didn't intend to, that's kind of, what we're looking at. Is this going to adversely affect any future upcoming projects that we have in the pipeline right now?
Based on our 5-year projection, the CIP, we actually have adequate funds to make this adjustment. So we have enough in the draft CIP budget, 5 years to fund everything that's in there right now. So with those funds.
Thank you. That's it.
Councilmember Zabriskie?
Becky, in the staff report, it says that there could be a possible $500,000 savings by waiting. What specifically did you have in mind other than other contractors bidding?
Well, the competition would potentially, more competition potentially would result in lower prices. The shortage of employees and the high cost of materials right now might result in a lower price if we rebid it next year. I don't know. I don't have the details on exact. There's not a specific item where we might have costs that I could point to. I just, in general, because our engineer's estimate is based on bids that we've received in the past year or two, and so the bid that we received, some of the items were, they were significantly higher than past bids. So it could be the pavement number could go down. I don't know. It's just
it did not assume that we were going to redesign or rescope the project. It was a simple estimate that it just felt like the project was overpriced in that order of magnitude.
In that order of magnitude. Okay, based on decades of experience, expert experience, you just go 20%. We're probably 20% over what it might be in a competitive environment.
That's what it was. Pure estimate, pure speculation.
No, professional experience and expertise. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That's what I thought. And then there's a reference to potential conflicts. Yeah, there was some reference to potential conflicts in there. Do you remember that? Because I want to know what that was about.
Do you have a page number, council member, that you could share?
I had it on page 2 of 3, number 2. There it is.
Oh, yes. So we will likely have other construction projects going on in the downtown area next year. And so the idea of trying to get this project done this year would result in less chance that this project would conflict. So there's a potential we might be starting on the West River Streetscape project with some utility undergrounding next year, for example. And so just and then the Church Street Extension Project, which is extending Church Street through the rail yard. So those are both, West River Street and Church Street are both major roads in downtown. And so just having one more road in the downtown area that's impacted could be difficult.
Okay, and I just noted, Holdridge and Cole now they're a big conglomerate. There's a reference to Holdridge and Cole, and I just.
Oh, I think, yes, so they used to be Holdridge and Cole, they're NV5 now, yeah. Correct.
Those are all my questions.
Thank you. Oh, God.
Thank you. Just, I think, 2 questions. So that I know that staff told us in our response to questions, we typically don't only receive one bid, right? It's sort of given the market conditions and just what's happening in the construction industry right now. So I guess this question is a little bit more forward-looking. Is there anything else we can be doing to make our bid strategy just more successful? You know, thinking about all those projects that we're going to put out to bid for the 2022 construction season. Any thoughts about that?
Well, I think timing things appropriately. One thing that we are still planning to put one more project out to bid this year, the Church Street Extension project. But one of our strategies there is to give the contractors more time to complete the project, as opposed to getting it all done this year, potentially giving them all next year and even the following year. So that allows them to bid and then have a comfort that they can get the project done within a reasonable time frame. So I think giving the contractors a little more time would potentially help.
Just building in that flexibility really for them. Okay, that's helpful. And then this might be a question for our town attorney. So I know our town is receiving about $3.7 million in ARPA funding. Are there restrictions on that funding? And I guess I'm asking because, you know, we have this project, we have another project we're going to talk about momentarily where costs are coming in significantly higher than expected. Can we use any of that funding to sort of repay the town for these higher than expected costs?
So 2 questions. I have a clear answer for the first one, but not for the second yet. Are there restrictions? Yeah, absolutely. A whole bunch of them. So the Treasury Department has just put out new guidance explaining what the restrictions are. And I think we're all in the process of sifting through those restrictions to see exactly how those funds can be used. So it's possible, maybe, that we might be able to use some of that for this, but I don't have a good answer for you just yet.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Councilmember Pallaby?
Are those the COVID funds? Is that what you were referring to?
American Recovery.
Got it.
Yeah.
I didn't. You were quick there. Yeah. I do not have any questions. Thank you. Just one for Councilmember Henderson, but other than that, I'm good.
Okay, great. Thank you. No, I asked all my questions in advance, so thank you very much. I appreciate the challenge that this is. Okay, do we have any public comment on this?
No.
Great. Council deliberations? Do you have any general discussion that you'd like to share down there?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I would just say I'm comfortable moving forward. You know, I appreciate the expertise of staff saying it could be cheaper next year, or less expensive, but we have no idea. As we just talked about in the housing conversation earlier, things are way different than we thought they would be a year ago. So I think it behooves us to move forward with this. This is an important project, part of priorities for our council. So I would support moving forward.
Mayor Klostad, we just got a public comment in right as we were closing.
Okay, let's go ahead and listen to that real quick.
It's a text comment. Hello, this is Sarah Green. I have a few clarifying questions regarding agenda item 7.3. Have these trail designs already been developed? And if so, are they available to the public? Thank you.
Yes, they've already been developed and they will be available to the public if we award the contract, right?
And the plans that went to bid were available under the additional public comment section of the agenda, the posted agenda. So they're available right now.
Thank you for the question, Sarah. Okay, Councilmember Zabriskie, you got the floor.
Yeah, I do have reservations about proceeding this year, given the $500,000 that might be saved. And I realize it's somewhat speculative and it's based on a professional opinion. It looks like $364 out of the general fund. We just had a discussion about housing. If I had to balance the two, I'd say we should be spending it on that 150% AMI and put the trail construction off to next year. I'm curious what the other council members think in that respect.
Well, let's get that opinion.
Well, I guess this might bring me back to a question, but if we were to put trail construction off to next year and rebid it, we're also putting other projects to bid. So aren't we then sort of essentially bidding against ourselves? Like, is there that risk, I guess?
I mean, there are certain contractors that we work with regularly, and, you know, if we're using one on one project, they're not necessarily available for another. So there's a little bit of, that could be potentially, there are a large number of contractors though, too, that we work with. So it's more standard that we would get, you know, 3 to 5 bids or maybe even more on a project.
And Becky, maybe just one more question, and sorry to bring us back to questions, but have we successfully rebid projects in the past? I mean, once we sort of have an established bid.
I can speak to that just because I've been around longer. We've been in situations like this before where we have chosen not to rebid and we've moved forward. And in hindsight, those, in my opinion, were the right decisions. The Courtyard project was a recent one where we saw the prices and we're like, oh my God. And I suspect if we had waited a year or two and we're bidding that now, we would see the prices now and say, oh my God, why did we wait the 2 years? I'm familiar with other public agencies who have rejected bids because they came in above what they thought the project should cost, gone to rebid, and then had unpleasant surprises of the costs going up even further and making the project that much more difficult. This is an occasion where I think our opinion is that if we went to rebid, the likelihood of getting better pricing is higher than in situations in the past where we've faced these circumstances. And the question, meaning that, yeah, okay, wait and rebid. The downside of that is it's not a guarantee. There are the timing issues. There's the loss of use of the infrastructure, you know, for that additional delay period. You have it. You don't have that infrastructure the benefit of that infrastructure to use as soon. So, you know, for us at a staff level, this one felt like a bit more of a coin flip. It's like, yeah, we think we're going to get better prices, but there's these intangibles in terms of having the trail sooner, not stacking up too much construction next summer, and that's why we came down on the side of recommending that we move forward with the project.
And Dan, the LPP grant funds do not sunset. So if, for example, to Councilmember Zabrisky's point, we delayed and did rebid, they could still be applied to this project in 2022?
Yes, we would have to go through some administrative effort to get an extension on the use of those funds. The current provisions call for us to have a construction contract awarded by, I think, August. And if we don't do that, then we would need to apply for an extension. We believe we could get one under the circumstances, but that's some additional work we would have to do.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Sorry, I went back to questions. It opened up a few more questions for me.
If you want me to go ahead.
Why don't you go ahead? I'm deliberating.
So I wholeheartedly support proceeding right now with this project, and I'll tell you why. And Councilmember Zabriskie, I think you know I value our housing investments above and beyond everything that we decide up here. Connectivity specifically and non-motorized connectivity is not really a close second, but it's second. And this particular section actually is super key. I lived on this section for years and years and years, and this is a hugely problematic little tiny stupid section that's going to be really expensive, with the unknown of if we will actually get a better price next year. And I obviously value Dan's expertise here, but it's a crapshoot at this point. We'd just be gambling. So my gamble is let's do this. Let's keep progressing, specifically on these legacy project trail extensions, because we have a lot more coming, and we're going to have to do this no matter what. And I agree. I think the compounding of different construction projects as we move some of this forward on our extremely limited arterials through town, there's not a lot of ways to get from point A to point B. So the more we can spread it out, the better. I'm going to save my housing arguments for next week and where I choose to spend our money. But for right now, I think this is a valuable use of our funds, and I do think we should execute on it quickly because I think it really shows progress. I think there's also an element of, what have you done for me lately other than build a bunch of big buildings around town that I don't like? So from a public perception standpoint, I also think this is a valuable investment on our part. Thank you.
You're coming back to me. I could tell. No, I mean, I agree with everything that Councilmember Pallavi has said, and that was sort of one of my, concerns in trying to delay it, is that we're compounding construction. We're thinking about West River Street in the future and that whole streetscape, and it connects into that, and just, goals around connectivity, as you said, and then, of course, our greenhouse gas and transportation goals. So I am dismayed that the costs are what they are, but I'm also supportive of moving forward.
Okay, so as somebody who actually bids public works projects for a living, that's what I said. I feel for you guys. This is tough. Bid day is always an exciting day until you find out that you only have one bid. You get an estimate for a project, and it literally will say, if you get one bid, it's going to be this number. If you get 3 bids, it'll be this much less, and 5 bids, it'll be this much less. That competition really does make a difference. And timing is everything, but sometimes timing is not within our control. My understanding is we bid these as quickly as, or bid this project as quickly as the documents were ready to do so, and it is something that we have been planning on and promising the community for a long time. I do really think that the market conditions, that pendulum is going to swing the other way at some point, but we have no idea when that's going to be. We have a lot of pressures on the market right now, and all of this conversation is going to duplicate itself in our next agenda item. Supplier issues are putting a lot of pressure on the contractors, so they feel unstable. So they're adding money into their bid to cover those types of things. We're seeing that here. It is unavoidable right now. It is not something that we are in control of. So and also to rebid this project, even whether it's in a month or in a year, there's staff time and there's cost associated with that as well as potential escalation. So as I said with the courtyard, I don't believe this is ever going to get any less expensive, and we need to figure out a way to pay for it. You guys have come forward with a very clear opportunity to do that successfully. We do have the funds to do it. I believe we need to move forward with it. So with that, do we have a recommendation?
Yes.
Or a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the 4 items under item 7.3. Do I need to read them out in full? No. There is your motion.
I will second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Wonderful. Let's move on. I'll turn myself off. 7.4. So another contract award for Coldstream Road Roundabout Project, C1712. Becky.
Thank you. This is gonna, some of this is, you said, is gonna be sound a little familiar.
We'll just do ditto. Ditto.
So we put another project out to bid. It's the roundabout at Coldstream Road, Donner Pass Road, and I-80 eastbound ramps. It's shown here on this graphic. You can actually see on the Google Earth kind of picture that we've got some of the development that's already started to happen, some of the infrastructure for the elements at Coldstream, as well as Coldstream Commons, the affordable housing development. So it's a roundabout. It includes a sidewalks and a multi-use path. It's actually the path that goes through the roundabout is part of the Legacy Trail. So just a little background on the roundabout. The roundabout is part of the traffic, it's a project identified in the traffic impact fee program. So that means we collect fees from developments as they occur, and the fees are meant to mitigate their impacts to the roadways. So projects that are in the traffic impact fee program are eligible to spend the fees on. This one is a little bit interesting. We can only collect so many fees. It's based on how fast development occurs. And so we've got a limited amount of funding in the traffic impact fee program. And so while this is eligible to spend traffic impact fees on, the timing did not work to the point where we could just spend the traffic impact fees up front. So we entered into an agreement with the developer where they would fund the construction up front and we would reimburse them the traffic impact fees over time. And that would allow us to maintain some of our traffic impact fees for some of the other priorities we have, which would be Church Street Extension and the Reimagine Bridge Street project, of which to combine right now, I think our proposed budget has about $11 million of traffic impact fees to those two projects. So we have an agreement with the developer that they would fund the construction up front, and then we would reimburse them over time using traffic impact fees, all except for $1.3 million, which was basically represents some additional grant funds that they got, Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities grant funds. And the award of the construction contract was contingent upon the receipt of a deposit from the developer before we start construction. So we opened bids, and the bid came in just under $5 million. We received one bid again. This time it was from Taker Construction. This time it wasn't twice the engineer's estimate, but was still significantly higher. It's just $1.3 million over what we had originally anticipated in the agreement with the Coldstream developer. But again, we are recommending that we move forward with the construction of this project. It would limit the impact to the Coldstream development. I mean, without this roundabout to provide access to both the affordable housing and the future single-family residential in Coldstream, we are kind of limited on issuing certificates of occupancy for those buildings. And then it would also better coordinate with the Caltrans project that is planned for next year, which would do some work on I-80 and construct an auxiliary lane. And so we're recommending move forward with this bid award, contingent upon Coldstream Properties providing the deposit for construction. And we did meet with the representatives from the developer today, and I think it sounds like we're working towards a solution that will get us that deposit. But if something did happen, we never got the deposit, our recommendation would be not to award the construction contract. So the cost estimate, when you add the contingency and the construction support, just for the construction side of things, it would be about $5.7 million. And what we're proposing to do is amend the budget really to add the $1.3 million into the it would be funded with the traffic impact fees, but it would initially be funded by the developer, and then we would pay back the $1.3 million in traffic impact fees. Well, the full amount of the traffic impact fees over time, based upon it was 15% per year, but there's also provision that if it's 15% of our traffic impact fee fund balance, whichever is lesser of the two. So again, we're recommending that we amend the budget and so that we can move this project forward to continue forward and allow the Coldstream development to continue. So for council priorities, it's climate and greenhouse gas reduction. Roundabouts have lower emissions than a stop-controlled or a signalized intersection. But also, as I mentioned, there's sidewalks and there's a portion of the Legacy Trail goes to the roundabout. Housing, as I mentioned, it provides a major access to both affordable and the single-family housing that's under development, and then obviously infrastructure investment. And so with that, our recommendation is to award the contract to Tiger Construction, authorize a 10% contingency, authorize the town engineer to approve the contract changes within the approved contingency amount, and then also authorize the budget amendment that's outlined in the staff report. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Becky. You want to start over here? Councilmember Pallavi?
I think all my questions were answered ahead of time, and I do not have any additional ones. But yeah, there's no. I guess what I'm just trying to elicit is there's no huge risk to us other than the deposit at this point. The bid is what it is, and it's going to be repaid over time, basically.
So the construction will initially be funded by the developer, and we will pay them back over time with using the traffic impact fee funds minus the 1.3 million. So,
and we won't sign a contract with the contractor until we've gotten the money from the developer in hand.
And while this chews up future impact fee funding, do we then have a commensurate traffic impact fee increase that happens in coming years? How do we adjust that? What's the timing on that?
So each year when we do our traffic impact fee program update, we adjust the cost estimates of the projects that are the basis for the impact fee. So this, the cost for this project has gone up, and so it will have a ripple effect through the actual fee that's charged.
Right. Okay, I think I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. This is sort of a broad question. Will the development of this roundabout have any negative traffic impacts just up the road at DPR and Northwoods at that intersection, which of course isn't a roundabout yet? Do we expect that? No. Okay, good. So originally the project was estimated at about 4.16 million. Is that correct? Okay. The developer is responsible for 1.3 million of that, which isn't reimbursed by the town, so just under 30% of that original estimate. And I guess if the current bid came in at roughly 1.3 above that agreement amount, is it typical for the town to solely be responsible for the sort of increased bid over expected cost? I guess, in other words, is there any pro rata sharing of those increased expenses that can happen?
So there could be. What was somewhat unique about this project, and the reason the town has this contract with the developer, is this project is in our traffic impact fee program. And then a part of our traffic impact fee program has provisions whereby if a developer builds a project that's in our fee program, it acknowledges that it's appropriate for the town to reimburse that as time goes on. So that was the rationale behind the agreement with the developer. Mm-hmm. So I think the town could go back to the developer and say, hey, the agreement that we have, we've agreed to reimburse up to 4.1 million. We're not going to reimburse any more than that. You have to pay the difference. Whether the developer would do that or not is unknown and probably unlikely. Mm-hmm. In which case, we would have a whole lot of cleanup to do with the Coldstream Specific Plan project, which would be interesting to see how that played out. Mm-hmm. And we would still not have the project built.
Right.
So there would be a subsequent town effort at some point in the future to go ahead and build the roundabout. With the current circumstance, the developer would front the money, and then we would pay them back over 7 years, per the reimbursement agreement. And I'm highly confident that if we were to wait the 7 years and build the roundabout then, that the cost would be greater than it is now.
Sure.
So anyway, it's a bit dynamic in terms of that whole rationale and relationship with the developer, but that's the impetus of it.
So you would not advise going back to the developer and saying, hey, originally you were contributing 28% of this total project cost. We want you to contribute 28% of the increased cost.
I could say we have done that, and the developer, being good developers, said, well, we think you as the town should just pay the cost increment now, and then just have the reimbursement be the original reimbursement amount. So that was a conversation we had earlier today, and what we told them is we said, well, our recommendation to the town council is that we just follow through with the agreement that we both entered into. Mm-hmm. Our agreement was that we hoped the project would cost 4.1, but that the project would be what it would be, and they would front the money, and we would reimburse them the amount that we ultimately that the project ultimately cost. The other thing that's very unusual is, in this case, the developer is a subsidiary of Teichert Corporation, right, and the contractor is Teichert Construction. Mm-hmm. So it's surprising to me how they do compartmentalize each other. Like the development team seems to be interested in doing anything they can to put pressure on their construction counterparts across the hall to do anything they can to work on lowering the project price, because the development arm doesn't want to front any more money than they have to. Mm-hmm. We don't want to reimburse any more money than we have to in the long run. So we do think that there's, because of this kind of strange dynamic, that there's some maybe mutual interest and maybe additional incentive beyond what just we as the town would normally have to actually not have the price tag, continue to ratchet up, which they can sometimes do on a project like this.
Sure.
So anyway.
Okay. So last question, if council approves it and moves forward tonight, when will construction of it actually occur? And because I know the certificates of occupancy are contingent upon this, correct?
Yep. So we would hope within the next month. I think at the point that we have entered into a construction contract with Teichert Construction and we have the money from Coldstream Properties, at that point we are confident that the project is moving forward and is effectively in a construction phase at that point. Because we would also have a performance bond that would come along with the contract. So what that would mean is we'd have a signed contract, and then we would have a bond, which would be a guarantee from an insurance company that if the contractor didn't build the project, the bonding company would come in and do it. So we think that would be adequate security.
Thank you.
Councilmember Zabriskie?
No questions.
Really?
No further questions either.
Yeah, my only question, I think you had it up in one of the slides. So we're essentially paying this back in the same amount of time. We're just going to use a higher traffic impact fee, which we have. It just means it's not going to something else, right?
Right. It's still the 15% per year is kind of the base payment reimbursement rate would stay.
Which is then what goes back into the traffic impact formula and will eventually raise that price in order to meet that requirement, that need. That's it for me. Thank you. Do we have any public comments on this?
No.
Thank you, Lynn. Okay, back for deliberation. Who wants to jump in?
Keeping with our order here. I mean, I'm not sure how much there is to deliberate, so unless anybody else has an opinion or wants to pontificate about something, please do. I will relinquish that, and if the answer is no, I will make a motion.
Yeah, I'll just say ditto from the last agenda item.
Yeah.
It's all the same.
Okay, all good. I will move that we move forward on the contract award for the Coldstream Road Roundabout Project C1712 and all 4 items contained therein. Need a second?
I will second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Well, that passes. Thank you, Becky. Thank you, Dan, for all of that great information. Congratulations on 2 more projects going this summer. And let's hope that Church Street comes in with a few more bidders. Promise them popsicles or something. Okay. Council reports. Councilmember Romack, would you like to start?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Right. I will start out and just mention I talked with Deirdre Henderson with the North Tahoe chapter of the Citizens Climate Lobby. You heard her in a public comment, but we just talked a little bit more about the Citizens Climate Lobby, so that was very interesting. I have talked with many neighbors about the vegetation removal project as I'm walking in my neighborhood. So hopefully I was able to share some of the updates from our last council meeting, which I think some people were glad to hear. In addition to that, last Friday, I had the pleasure of checking out the Museum of Truckee History with the mayor and also David Diamond from the Truckee Airport Board. That was very interesting. I would encourage everybody to check it out. It's open Saturdays and Sundays at the depot in downtown Truckee. It's a great look at our history and how Truckee has continually reinvented itself, which I think is just a good mindset we should all keep. And also, in my capacity through my job with Placer County, I attend the Transportation Management Association meetings, but Dan Wilkins is the chair, and there was a great conversation at the meeting last week about microtransit and how the town, is going to be paying attention to the programs and just other great collaboration in the region. So Dan and Kelly, you guys do a great job at that meeting, and it's just exciting to see what the town will be looking at in the future. So that's my report for now. Thank you very much.
Great stuff. Councilmember Zabriskie.
Yes, I missed the last council meeting, so over the last 4 weeks, I attended the Local Agency Formation Commission, where most of the agenda items, in fact, all of them concerned either annexations or spheres of influence on the west side of the county. I also attended the same North Tahoe Truckee Transit Management Association meeting with Lindsay, and similarly, I was struck by the level of cooperation and collaboration among the multiple agencies. The main focus of that discussion of interest to us is the establishment of micro-transit across the state boundaries. That's quite an accomplishment. I used to work for the state of Nevada, and we had oversight of licensing transportation commissions or companies, so I really appreciate the blending of the local jurisdictions across the borders, how successful they are. Attended Rotary and COVID meetings. Spent quite a bit of time on the Homeless Respite Center, and I was struck by the amount of collaboration and the valuable community services provided by our community collaborative, the North Tahoe Truckee Homeless Services, Church of the Mountains, and United for Action, among others. And the county agencies, I met with them last Monday morning in a meeting arranged by Supervisor Bullock and got a fuller understanding of the situation there. A great deal of appreciation was expressed for the efforts of our town manager to help out with this situation, and I'm just grateful for the contribution our local nonprofits have made, the time and effort they've put in, and then the response of our staff. And then another item, which Lindsay also mentioned, and the last item I'm going to talk about, is the tree removal project. I, too, am being struck by by the level of expertise reflected in many of the comments and the letters that came from the group in Sierra Meadows, about 20 signatories to the letter that came before the council when I was gone, as well as subsequent communications from PhDs and botanists and foresters and arborists and ecologists, which does have me concerned. I see this as being an ongoing dispute throughout the summer. I expect to see a lot more photographs of different sections of the neighborhoods that are being cut down. I would like to have the mayor manager or maybe this council set something for the agenda or set up a workshop with the community. I do not see this issue going away, and while the mayor said we could take no action on item 4, comments earlier this evening, we can take action at a later time, and that's what I was hoping we could do now, is set something for a later time, whether it be a workshop or an agenda item.
I would note that staff has been working with the Sierra Meadows Homeowners Association to schedule a community workshop for next Wednesday, the 19th, that will be Zoom-based. So just for your information.
That's good to know. And then Glenshire is going to hop in, and Prosser Lakeview. I'm sure those are. I don't think it'll end with Sierra Meadows. Anyway, yeah, I would love to see something.
Yeah, the workshop's open to the public. The Sierra Meadows HOA has been actively publicizing it
throughout the town.
Throughout their subdivision. We've been working with the Glenshire HOA on communication on the Glenshire side as well.
Okay, I hope that you can bring more of this to the council so that we have a greater sense. It helps me in individually responding to people. I've already seen some, well, a lot of statements flying around. Some of them aren't accurate. Communication's important.
Yes, it is. And I'm privy to that. Only I just learned of that plan tonight. I'm very excited about it. I know staff would be willing to do a similar meeting for any of the other homeowners association areas should those groups want to gather and do that too. And then I would anticipate we would receive some sort of update of how that went and if there's any additional changes or pieces of information that we should know about after that, either from Dan or from during the staff or the council issues list. What is it? Items of interest. Thank you. We'll get feedback on that. Anything else, Councilmember Zabriskie?
No, that's it. Thank you, and thank you for the information, Deb.
Okay, over this side.
Thank you. I attended our weekly COVID meetings. I also participated in a legislative briefing meeting. We went through approximately 70 different bills that are being introduced in the California legislature on topics ranging from disaster and emergency preparedness to homelessness, environmental quality, planning and zoning, and a lot more. I also participated in a Broadband for Rural Communities webinar where they talked about building open access networks, discussed financing models, the current and proposed broadband legislation, and provided some examples from other rural counties, including just near us in Mono County and Mammoth Lakes. I had a meeting with David Diamond to continue discussing town and airport board ideas and opportunities for collaboration, including related to housing. I met with Supervisor Hardy Bullock. Just something that's really interesting that I wanted to share with our community is that the county has just purchased 2 electric buses and a fast charging system, which actually allows the buses to charge during layovers while passengers are onboarding and offboarding. So we're working on setting up a time to go down there together to talk more about these transit opportunities and, you know, how they might be useful to know more about for our community. Then lastly, I participated in the unveiling of the COVID-19 memorial down in Nevada City. And this is a memorial to commemorate and remember, the 75 individuals that our county has lost to COVID-19. It'll be coming to Truckee this summer, so everyone here will have an opportunity to see this art installation right here in our community. And I guess I just want to end with my ask to everyone, please make sure you're getting vaccinated. The FDA has just approved Pfizer for children aged 12 to 15. My understanding is that you can now book appointments for children aged 12 to 15 at the Tahoe Forest Clinic, at the college. We've already lost 75 people. I don't want us to lose more. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's important. So just for a point of clarification, because I think this started to happen at the end of our last meeting, and then I just heard Councilmember Zabriskie suggest something. So was that a formal suggestion for a future agenda item? I think what I would just like to put out there for all of us is be very clear. Say, I am making a formal request that we agendize X. Right, as we did at the last meeting, basically, just so there isn't any confusion and sort of wishy-washiness out there. That would just be my preference. So I don't know if that was or wasn't, but it sort of like sounded like it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It is a formal request. It is a formal request that we agendize an informational discussion item on the status and suitability of the vegetation removal.
Okay, so I didn't want to be remiss and have you be unheard or have any confusion pursuant to that.
David, Councilmember Polivy, I owe you.
Unfortunately, with that said, I personally would say no to that, but that I am just one of 5 that have to say yes. So that would be my response to that formal suggestion. I just for clarity's sake, if that's what we've all decided, so we move that along, and then the rest of you can chime in, and I'll do my quick report, which is very thematic, apparently, as I took notes on it. So lots of outdoor stuff and tourism stuff seems to be my theme these days, but participated in a Forest Service sponsored Region 5 planning session, which was great. Dan was able to join me on that. It was a little bit more of a lobbying session, I would call it, rather than planning. And it was really interesting. We had leaders from all over Region 5 in all segments and sectors of the Forest Service join that. And then there were breakout groups specifically for the Tahoe and the LTBMU, and then up north as well. It was really quite interesting, and we were able to get many of our local outdoor advocacy groups to attend that as well. We had another CCC, which stands for Convene, Catalyze, and I tried to find the third C, but I couldn't find the other agenda, but it is the roundtable to address peak visitation. That was a very successful event, and we had a nice ceremony for Madam Zurich back there, which I'm sure we will get to view again maybe in 2 weeks for everybody's benefit. But Blake Treesan from the Sanitation District went over some of the sewer data that Jen forwards us on a fairly regular basis, and a couple of other great presentations, along with a coordinated communication strategy, which only took however many years to maybe get to, which still is not in place, but we're getting there. And then we launched yet another piece of a subset of that group, which is being referred to as the Sustainable Truckee Outdoor Recreation Coalition. And that was joined by, there were approximately 10 people on that call, lots of Forest Service, Land Trust, Truckee Trails, basically trying to convene everybody so that there isn't a whole bunch of overlap and everybody's sort of working together and really consolidating efforts as best as possible from both funding and resource positions. And that is it for my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Polivy, and thanks for that clarification. Councilmember Zabriskie, my apologies. I heard you either wanted to agendize it or have some sort of public meeting, and I knew there was a public meeting going on, so I thought that had satisfied it. So does that not satisfy your request? Did you still want to agendize?
No, Councilmember Pallavi persuaded me to ask to agendize it, even though he may not have intended to do so.
Okay. All right, good to know. I personally would, before I get into my report, let's close that issue out. I would like to see how the public information meeting goes, receive council feedback or staff feedback, and at that point, possibly consider it. But I would really love to keep this in the staff's hands, because that is how we approved it, that it was a staff level project and review. And if we come to the conclusion that, because we're all getting calls and emails and having discussions with constituents that are concerned about this project, if we don't feel like we could come to a solution or an equitable resolution to this at that time, I would consider bringing an agenda item forward, but I would like it to be processed at the staff level to start. That would be my opinion. And are you?
Let me just briefly respond that because it's an ongoing project, I don't see it being amenable to being done in a sequence. I don't have any problem with a staff meeting with the public. I think that helps. But the project continues regardless. So we're allowing it to continue and effectively postponing having it come before the council.
We are effectively having it postponed. So I guess the question back to you then, if you're requesting this to be agendized, what specifically are you requesting staff to bring to us?
Oh, the basis for doing the vegetation removal, the criteria that are being considered, and whether it's actually advancing the goals of the town, whether it's consistent with our tree preservation ordinance, and actually accomplishing the purposes for which it was intended.
Okay. So hearing that, do I have any other staff or council members that are interested in the same?
Do you mind if I jump in?
Please.
I would agree with you, Mayor. I think we should see how the meeting goes with the HOA with Sierra Meadows next week. I will also say I live in Sierra Meadows, so I was planning to attend to my fellow council members. So besides staff, I can definitely provide an update to you all. But I think let's go through that public process. As you said, Mayor, have staff continue to work on this. I don't think we need to agendize it at this time.
Any other feedback?
I agree with you, Mayor Klostad, and I will just say that the meeting happening next week is not the only meeting. So Jen, you might want to say something. I know you all have done a tremendous amount of public outreach. You've been out to individual properties, you've met with other homeowner associations. Maybe I don't know if we can do that, our town attorney can weigh in, but maybe that would be valuable for the entire council to hear.
And I also think this has been I know it's been agendized on the Glenshire HOA board a minimum of twice in the past 6 months as I follow those agendas as well. So that's just also my personal.
I'm going to ask Mr. Wilkins to add in on some of the outreach that they've done. It's his department that's really leading that. I will say, I know I've been to one property so far, in addition to the Public Works team and the engineering team, and there's at least some conversations that have happened or attempted to happen with Sierra Meadows that maybe Dan can speak to.
Sure. Yeah. So we've probably communicated with about 350 individual property owners over the life of the project so far, and we have a dedicated project manager who his responsibility is to work with the contractor, but also to meet with property owners to let them know what the scope of the project is, what the purpose of the project is, and what they can expect out of it. If the expectation of the council is that every citizen in Truckee is going to agree and concur with the project work scope, that will not happen. So that if that is the standard, if that's the expectation, and if the project is deemed a failure, if that expectation is not met, I don't want to create unrealistic expectations for you. As it relates to the project meeting its intended goals, a lot of the expert feedback we've received has been expert feedback in the context of forest management. And this is a right-of-way management project which includes forest management elements, but includes many other considerations. And I think that's where there is potentially a bit of a disconnect between some of the expert commentary that we've been receiving and the goals of the project. So that's one of the things we're hoping to help clarify in the meeting next week. But with that said, I can virtually assure you that there will be individuals who still do not believe in the scope of the project or the need for the project. So with that said, I would say that 90 to 95% of the interactions that we have are, I would say, neutral or positive, in that when we meet with the property owner, when we discuss the intent of the project, the multiple goals of the project, and what the actual effect is adjacent to their property, because a lot of people think we're doing work on their property, and we're not. We're doing work in the public right-of-way. Generally, I would say that the bulk of those interactions result in the property owner understanding, not being overly upset, in many instances being disappointed because there's that one tree that they really wish could stay, but that's part of within the scope of the project, and that's, I would say, the majority of the interaction that is occurring at the staff level. I think what the council is seeing are the individuals who are most passionate about the project that are not satisfied with the information that we're giving them as staff, and then are bringing it to your attention as well. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Dan. Roughly how many properties is this impacting?
So it's not impacting any property in terms of direct work on anyone's property. In Glenshire, we've got about 1,500 single-family homes that we would be working on the roads in front of. We've completed about half of that already. So that's about 750 of those single-family home sites. We have completed the work on the roads out there already, and then we're moving into the second half of the subdivision. I don't recall the lot count in Sierra Meadows. Do you recall that, Danielle or Prosser? I want to say it's most likely in the 400 to 500 lots per subdivision range, just kind of based on estimating the relative size of Sierra Meadows as compared to Glenshire, and the same as Prosser.
Okay, that's helpful. I think another big issue here for me is equity, and making sure we're being consistent with this application in our right-of-way. So that's another reason that I hesitate to for pause, or for lack of a better word, open this back up for public discussion. So that's where I stand with it. It doesn't look like there's any other further changes on that. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that divergence. So I'll finish with my council reports. First of all, it's delightful to have everybody here with me. So nice not to be up here alone. I think we've covered the vegetation project. I was just going to say I've had multiple conversations with staff and constituents. I think we're good there. Really enjoyed Good Morning Truckee this morning. It was all about fire and fire preparedness, and which is also a big theme that we are talking about here. And now my computer's frozen. We and, maybe just one last word on that. Anybody that is still in doubt about this project, go and watch the documentary on Paradise. It's very sobering. You will want this project. I want this project in my neighborhood. I was honored to be able to hand out some teacher appreciation awards, which was nice because it was Teacher Appreciation last week. Really enjoyed the Truckee Donner History Museum, and I would just add to your description that they did an amazing job with such a small place by leveraging the volume of information that they have to offer through touchscreens. And you get a little stylus when you walk in, and you can go around to all the touchscreens and see just dozens of pictures and additional information and commentary. Really, really well done. I highly recommend everybody jump in and see that. I met with Pete Fenolio of CAT and discussed our Community Development Department improvements and what's been going on there. It was a very productive conversation. I also spoke at the Dem Club meeting and just kind of did an update on our council priorities. It was very well received. It was very nice. Had multiple conversations with concerned citizens and the Nevada County Resource Conservation District, as well as Supervisor Bullock, on noxious weeds in our community. So people wanting to still get rid of more vegetation just on the noxious weed part, and I think we're actually making some great progress in connecting the dots. The COVID remembrance ceremony was very powerful. I went to that with Jen and Vice Mayor Henderson, and we were very well received in Nevada City. It was great to see all the different leadership there and a couple of the family members. And yeah, get your vaccine. We do not want to have any more deaths in our community. And then lastly, just had a delightful time at Chambers Thirsty Thursday, where they hosted Truckee's first mayor and Truckee's current mayor in welcoming some new members of our community. We did a little trivia and had a great time. It was really nice, really well done. I'm just appreciative of all the ways that our community is reaching out to its new residents, and this was a great example of it. So with that, anything else for anybody to add? I think our next meeting will be the budget workshop on May 20th next week, and then we have a council meeting on May 25th. The budget workshop starts at 2 o'clock and the council meeting starts at 5 as usual. And we are adjourned until then. Thank you.